right, we are live.
Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 City Commission meeting. This is generally our work session night, but we are having a special meeting tonight as the reason why you are all here, and thank you so much for coming. I will convene the meeting, and we will have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith. Here. Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
I am present. So we're going to do your swearing in now.
Are we going to do the flag
Oh,
salute?
yes. Is there? They left off the flag suit. Okay. Well, the flag suit's not on there, but we're going to do it anyway. All right, so
Okay.
would you please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Make sure I have the right agenda. The one I printed out does not have. Sorry. We have one item of business that we would like to take care of tonight, and that will be the swearing in of our new commission president. So I'd like to ask for the judge to come forward, and Adam, would you please go forward and take the oath?
Oh, you can have this.
In this,
Oh,
grab that one.
yeah.
Yep.
And repeat after me. I, Adam Marl,
I, Adam Marl,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Oregon,
and the state of Oregon,
along with the Oregon City Municipal Charter and Code.
along with the Oregon City Municipal Charter and Code.
I will, to the best of my ability,
I will, to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform the duties
faithfully perform the duties
of Commission President of Oregon City
of Commission President of Oregon City
during my incumbency thereof.
during my incumbency thereof.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, please sign your life away right now.
Or just 3 months.
So Adam will be serving as our commission president until the end of the year. Thank you for stepping up and doing that. Get some pictures. All right, is there anyone here tonight for an item, under citizen comments, for an item that is not on the agenda? I don't think so, but I just don't want to leave anybody out. Okay, so we will move on, seeing none. So I want to just make a few remarks before we open the public hearing, which is why everyone is here tonight. And again, thank you for coming. What I do want to ask on behalf of the commission, so I want to ask for those who are here tonight to testify and those who are here to observe in the audience to please help us manage this meeting. This is a little bit unprecedented. We've not had this many items in terms of the appeal and the number of appellants. And I think it behooves us all to be considerate and conscientious of who else is in the room, whether you agree with them or not. I mean, we're all just people, as you're all aware. And whether we have differences of opinion, but that doesn't really matter, but we need to be courteous. So I would please ask, I'm not reading from a script, so just so you know, please we'll ask for no applause. Please try, if you're going to have sidebar conversations, please feel free to step out into the lobby and not do it in here, because sometimes this room is hard to hear people in. I know sometimes I have a problem hearing people, and I can hear pretty well. It will help the commissioners. It will help you. We'd like to have no clapping, no applause. Please don't hoot. Please do not approach the dais. Please do not bring any phones up to the staff or to the commission. If you need something, we do have staff here. Greg is here, Lisa's here, John is here, Patrick is here. Please direct any concerns you have to them, and they will get it to Jacob or the city manager. That would be helpful. We don't really usually do all this type of stuff, but because we have an extraordinary process tonight, I'm just asking for, please, a little civility. Many of you sitting in the audience are friends and neighbors and residents of our community. We all know each other, and I'm just asking for people to be considerate tonight. It's very emotional in many cases. That's all we're just asking. If you could do that, that would be wonderful, and it will make this process be a little easier for all of us, and it will be smoother. So as you know, many of you who've been a part of this process in the city on other occasions know that we don't have our public hearing thing on the door over there. We are going to be having a public hearing. It is an appeal of the Park Place Crossing General Development Plan, and I'll skip reading all the file numbers. So we are going to go over the land use hearing script, just so that everybody is on the same page, and we can get through this with minimal discomfort, I hope. And our city attorneys are here to offer us assistance, as is our staff. So I will go ahead and go through this if you would allow me to do that. So the commission's role tonight is to conduct a public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before it. In making those decisions, the commission must apply the applicable codes and laws, and we cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. The hearing procedure that the commission will follow, as you are aware, is set out in state law and in Oregon City's municipal code. Generally speaking, the order will proceed as follows. There will be 15 minutes for the staff report. Each of the 9 appellants will then have 10 minutes each. The applicant will have 20 minutes, then 3 minutes each for any other party withstanding, and finally 20 minutes rebuttal for the applicant. Does anybody need me to repeat that? You can just raise your hand if you didn't get that, and I can do it again. Okay, seeing none, and can everybody hear me? Okay, for the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. This is an appeal hearing, so the evidentiary record is closed, and the issues are limited to those raised in the notices of appeal. Those issues, as well as the applicable criteria, can be found in the staff report. All arguments should be directed towards the applicable approval criteria and limited to the issues that have been raised. And we all know this one by heart. Failure to raise an issue in a manner sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue will preclude an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Any person with standing may submit written material while the appeal hearing is open. Any written materials received by the city staff while the hearing is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the appeal hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff while the record is open, they cannot be included in the record. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Members of the commission are to be unbiased and without ex parte contacts. As a result, each of the commissioners will disclose any potential conflicts such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. In addition, any commissioners who have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of relevant facts such as from a visit to the site in question must disclose that information. Any party withstanding may question the commission about their disclosures. At this point, does the commission have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, as we defined above, bias, or any other statement to declare, or have visited the site? And I'll start with Commissioner O'Donnell.
Addressing each of the criteria which you enumerated without restating them, I have no bias in the matter. I have no ex parte contacts. Thank you.
I have no contacts either, and no bias. I have been to the site.
Have you visited the site, Commissioner O'Donnell?
Not closely. I've been by it, but I have not walked it or anything extreme.
Commissioner Merle?
No bias, no conflicts of interest. Mr. Guile did speak to the Citizen Involvement Committee, which I am the liaison to, and he spoke a little bit about what would be coming up. And then I have not had a site visit, although I am pretty familiar with the area.
I have to say for the record that I have lived in Oregon City for a very long time, so I generally know where the site is. And as any citizen who has friends in different part of the community, I have been in Park Place, but that has nothing to do with this application. It was visiting friends. I have not visited the site specifically, nor do I have any family, financial, or business relationships with anybody involved in this particular application. However, it is fair to declare, as I stated earlier, that I know probably everybody in this audience, as we all do, because we live here and we see each other and we're involved in other things together. I do want to report that prior to the Planning Commission making a final decision, which I unfortunately thought they had already done that, I did send some members of the Planning Commission a copy of an item that was already in the record, but I thought that they had already made their decision. So I'm just declaring that for the record. I will say for the record that I do know of several of the applicants and have been, since I've worked in Oregon City for a very long time, they've been around for a very long time, and we have some familiarity with, but not recently. I also know the attorney for the applicants. So, like I said, you've been in Oregon City for a while, you know people and you know of people. So that's just this community. So is there anyone in the audience who would wish to ask any questions about our disclosures? Okay, hearing none, I open the public hearing and we'll have the staff report.
Chair, may I make a question
Oh,
to our
absolutely.
legal?
Hang on.
I have a question to legal. For everybody present, this is the information we have to digest. It's about 2.5 inches thick, both sides.
Well, some of it.
In addition, today there were some late submittals, and these submittals, my question to legal is, are they reviewed by legal to decide if there's any new information tendered that we should be disregarding? Because they are late submittals, they came anywhere between 10 and 3 today. So if legal would care to answer that question, I would like to hear it.
Yes, they have been reviewed to see if there's any new evidence. As they come in, we're processing as quickly as we can. I don't believe we identified any new evidence in there. As part of the testimony you may hear tonight, somebody may say there's new evidence here, and we'll take a deeper dive. But as I understand it, The review that we've had for our short period of time indicates no new evidence that we've seen.
That's what I needed to know. Thank you, sir.
Sorry about that. We just had someone walk in that is not on my list. I want to make sure I got them on the list, not my list, but our list, so that we get everybody to be heard. Okay, hang on just a quick second. I always use a pencil.
Thank you,
erase stuff.
Madam Mayor.
Oh,
My name
please,
is-
not madam. Thank you for the respect, but I do not wish to be called madam. That's not really,
What was it?
I find that not happy. I'm not happy with that.
Honorable Mayor.
Thank you.
My name is Carrie Richter. I'm the Deputy City Attorney, and I'll be doing the staff report this evening. There are a lot of issues before you tonight, as Commissioner O'Donnell just mentioned, and out of respect and the need to hear from everybody tonight, I am going to do a very high-level summary of the appeal issues and do it in 15 minutes as the procedures require. And we have number of city staff people here ready to answer any questions, so we are prepared to help the commission through this process by responding to questions as they come up or at the end or however the commission would prefer. As I know the commission is aware, we have a 120-day deadline for a final decision of October 23rd. That is a Sunday. October 21st is the Friday. We need to mail the decision on October 21st. So unlike the Planning Commission that had the opportunity for 5 hearings, you're going to get the opportunity for very few. So we need to move along, and so in that vein, that's what I'm going to do, if I can move this PowerPoint
All
forward.
right, can you give me just one more second to say one thing? So in the interest of being able to hear everybody tonight, because that is our goal, is that we want to be able to hear all the testimony that everybody has, and we want to be very attentive to you. Please be very mindful of the time. I don't mean to be rude, but I will cut you off if you're past the time, because we want everybody to get their say. So if you are in the mid-sentence and you've got, going to end it, I'm going to be as accommodating as possible, because many of you know that I really support citizen involvement. But if you get 4 minutes and the other person only gets 2.5, we want to try to be fair to everybody. So I'm going to have staff helping, so when they start giving you the signal that you've got like 30 seconds left, we'll try to get everything that you want to say in your time. I know I've had to practice in front of the mirror when I've been testifying at other hearings for other jurisdictions and our own. So I know that it seems like it's a really short time, but sometimes time stands still. So Ms. Richter, please feel free.
Thank you. As I think the mayor mentioned, this hearing is limited, meaning that new issues that were not raised in the 9 notices of appeal will not be considered. I need to point out that we have just been made aware that there is a 10th appeal. Richard Guerrero also appealed, and we will take testimony from him tonight, and he submitted written materials, and we will get them to you. In addition, there will be no new evidence, and as Mr. Kabizman explained, the applicant has raised some concerns about new issues being raised as part of this appeal, and rather than deal with those at the outset, we would prefer to have everybody testify, and then we will deal with whether or not we need to redact or remove issues as part of the deliberation once we've heard from everyone. The subject site is, as you know, where it is. It is on the east side of town. It is within the urban growth boundary, abutting urban reserve area. About 50 of the subject property acreage was included in the original urban growth boundary in 1978, and about 40 acres was added to the UGB in 2012. This area is a process that is part of a long-standing development process for this area. After being included in the urban growth boundary, it was included within the Park Place concept plan, which was adopted in 2008. Then in 2018, it was subject to an annexation decision and rezoning where the property was designated from a future urban designation in the county to a residential designation of R10, R5, and neighborhood commercial. Condition 4 to that annexation and zone change required that the applicant go through a master plan approval. A master plan, as I know the commission knows, under OCMC 1765 is a two-step process. It requires a general development plan approval first, and then followed by detailed development plan approval that is accomplished through a type 2 review. So although it doesn't go to the planning commission, it does include notice and an opportunity to appeal. DDPs, detailed development plan approvals, are reviewed for compliance with the general development plan approval. And then after a DDP has occurred, then you have building permits. So we're about halfway through the process of developing this area. As I know you've seen this map many times, this is the Park Place concept plan map. You will see that the subject property is outlined in red here. It is largely yellow, which means it is designated for residential use. It does include a neighborhood park on the west side. It includes also some neighborhood commercial on the south edge. This is part of an area that the concept plan calls the North Village. The North Village this is about half of that North Village area. I'm going to let the applicant.
Could you go back just real quick?
Yeah.
So, okay, I was trying to see, the pink was a little hard to see there, or the fuchsia color, so that's what we're talking about?
The red line that sort of cut across by Livesey in the south, then goes up to the north, and then across the top near Holcomb Road. The general development plan proposal is changed over the process before the planning commission, but it now is 426 residential units divided into 6 phases on 91 acres. The project includes 4.3 acre community park, open space with trails, an on-site stormwater management facility, and 1.3 acres to accommodate retail and civic space. The applicant requested a couple of adjustments or modifications to the code in order to accommodate the plan. The first one was to modify the street width standards, and that is on a segment of Holly Lane. And if I had a pointer, I would, I do. It's right.
Tell me where to go.
It's right between phases 1 and 2, which you don't know where that is. Where the neck of Holly Lane, right there, it's right there. And that's often referred to as the pinch point. And so that is an area where you'll hear some concerns. There were reduction in the lot dimension standards and a change in the lot sizes. And then there were some adjustments to, there's an obligation to have alley access. And so those are the changes that were proposed. There's a variance to reduce the minimum lot size of the attached single-family residential lots to 1,800 square feet. So the appeal issues before the commission for consideration can be grouped together by procedural concerns, transportation livability impacts, residential urban design and infrastructure obligations, residential neighborhood commercial design obligations, parks and trails, and geologic hazard avoidance obligations. And there's some overlap between the appeal issues, as I'm sure you'll hear, but those are the general areas. With respect to the procedural concerns, there have been challenges to the Planning Commission's vote on September 12th. I think we explained in our staff report that Commissioner Stagg's untimely participation by phone or lack of disclosures did not require disqualification of Commissioner Stagg's or invalidation of the Planning Commission's decision. But even if that were the case, the city commission's de novo review here resolves any concern with respect to that vote. The applicant has raised concerns with the way in which the city commission decided to grant fee waivers. And the concern that they've raised is that they now have to respond to 9 or 10 appeals now instead of what would have been one. But there's no limit on the number of appeal issues a party can raise. So the Park Place Neighborhood Association could have raised all the issues and there would have been just as much work. So the staff's position is that that is not a reason to invalidate the fee determination. There has been an appeal issue raised with respect to language within the ordinance adopting the Park Place concept plan that talks about further zone changes to implement the Park Place concept plan. And that requires denial or delay of this decision until those amendments take effect. And staff's position is that the Park Place concept plan applies as a criteria in and of itself. So we don't need a zoning implementation to make the concept plan apply. It applies independently as an approval criteria under the master plan review. The other thing is that the city has an obligation to process an application against the applicable approval standards that are in place. And we can't delay an application because we haven't perhaps implemented all of the things that we thought we would implement in time. One of the primary issues that has been raised is concern about the lack of north-south connection to Redland Road and the impacts the traffic will have on the trails in neighborhood, which is directly to the north of this development. And the applicant has put together a kind of elaborate access management program in order to try to minimize those impacts. And I'm not going to go through it in detail, but the first 2 phases of this development will only use trails in for access points for emergency access only. So this is phase 1, and you can see that, and phase 2, and the only access will be for emergency, pedestrian, and bicycle access. With respect to phase 3, you will have a closure of the access points remaining on phases 1 and 2, but phase 3 will take access through the trails in neighborhood. And the conditions of approval require that if any of these access connections end up accommodating more than 2,000 average daily trips, then that triggers the connection for Redland Road. And the conditions also provide that when 4, 5, and 6 come online, that Redland Road connection will be there. So that is the way that the staff and the applicant had considered this and imposed conditions to ensure that result. There are concerns raised about the traffic count and the road design. The city's traffic engineer is here today, and John Replinger, and he can respond to any concerns, but suffice it to say that both the applicant's traffic engineer and John Replinger reviewed the traffic count data and determined that it was adequate. And the conditions of approval require a reevaluation of the traffic conditions at every phase. So if it turns out that the traffic engineers today undercounted the traffic, for example, at Highway 213 and Redland Road, that will be evaluated and appropriate mitigation determined at that time. There have been concerns raised over the residential density and the design. I think I mentioned that the North Village, the plan assumes that the North Village will accommodate 936 residential units. And this land makes up about 50% of the land within the North Village. So it would be reasonable to assume that the development would provide about half of those units, or 450, 460-ish. The applicant has proposed 436. This is how the Planning Commission evaluated sort of the rough proportionality of the units. If we reduce the density significantly on this piece, then that will force the density somewhere else, and we'll come up with a shortfall in the number of units projected. The appellants have argued that that the decision does not provide an adequate number of green edges, and at the south end and the west end of phase one, there are no green edges, and staff has identified a condition of approval to ensure that result. The appellants have expressed concerns about the way stormwater is being treated, and the applicant has identified that given the steep slopes that a regional treatment is the only option, and I'll let them talk about that further. With respect to alley accesses, I mentioned that the concept plan does call for the use of detached side entry or rear entry garages. The applicant's revised layout provides access via alleys in all those areas that are in purple, and it has explained that the areas in blue cannot provide alley access because they are topographically constrained. This is about 60% of the lots, and staff found that would still satisfy the concept plan if as part of the DDP approval, that the topographic constraints were evaluated at that time when we know where houses will actually go on the lots.
So can I ask you a quick question?
Please.
So that is, in the concept plan, you're saying that it's strongly suggesting that there be alley access, so that means we're not going to have garages in the front?
Correct.
Okay.
And in fact, the condition expressly says that there can be no garage access on Holly Lane.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Neighborhood commercial design, we've heard an appellant has raised concern that the proposed plan does not adequately protect the neighborhood commercial area, does not adequately reflect exactly what is shown in the map. You'll see in this image is an overlay of the plan map and the proposed Park Place crossing design. And you will see that there is some housing in that red area that is identified as retail, and the applicant has reoriented the commercial so that it runs up Holly Lane on the east and then runs along, let's say, to the south. And so there's about the same amount of retail, commercial, and civic space. It's just reorganized. And the Park Place concept plan map talks about how the boundaries are conceptual and that it was anticipated that they might move. But the other concern that's raised by the appellant is the lack of design guidelines with respect to neighborhood commercial. They would like to see two-story mixed use development, and although the city did adopt design guidelines with respect to its neighborhood commercial zone, with respect to transparency, with respect to orientation, it doesn't require two stories. So staff had recommended a condition that would require that development to be two-story. It still has to front the street. There will be less than a 5-foot setback for that development under the existing design standards. Geologic hazards have been raised by an appellant and concern over steep slopes. This is the steep slope map, and if you consider that against the development, which is shown here, you will see that the development does not encumber the steep slopes on the west or the south side. The area that I think was of concern to staff is the pink in the middle. The pink in the middle are isolated slopes that the Holly Lane extension runs kind of right through the middle of. And during the proceeding before the Planning Commission, the applicant explained that avoiding those slopes would be very difficult for a number of reasons. And as a result, the staff imposed a condition, or recommended a condition that would require evaluation and efforts to avoid the steep slopes as part of the DDP review. Finally, the appeal issue with respect to parks and trails, the applicant has provided 4.3 acre park dedication. The appellants have argued that there needs to be a greater allocation for parks, and the plan for the North Village does talk about 8 to 10 acres of parkland. But again, this is only half of the parkland to be developed, so only half of the park should be supplied by this development, and then the rest of the development will provide the remainder of the park. It is also generally in the area that is provided in the concept plan, but it is not exact. There were some concerns about trails. The proposal does identify a system of trails, and those are set forth in the plan, and in yellow are the open space areas, and the pedestrian access ways are in blue. Finally, we've received a concern from the applicant raised for the first time in their response materials that the appellant's issues are call into question the degree to which the master plan criteria are clear and objective. And I know you all have heard us say the words clear and objective many times. We won't dig into that too far because our office has not had time to fully research it, but this issue was not raised by the applicant until the final written rebuttal at the Planning Commission. So for the 5 hearings before the Planning Commission, the applicant never said, you can't apply these criteria because they're not clear and objective. And so as part of the final rebuttal before the Planning Commission, they raised this concern. Planning Commission didn't deal with it. And so now, yesterday, the applicant has raised clear and objective again. It is, right now, the city attorney's position is that the applicant can't raise this new issue when they didn't file an appeal, right? The review is limited to the issues raised on the appeals. But we haven't researched this to the degree that we would like. And what we have researched is that the law favors needed housing. And there are some pretty strict rules about if an appellant wins a needed housing case at LUBA, an improper denial for the application of discretionary criteria, LUBA will reverse the decision and require the city to pay attorney's fees. So that's a pretty significant hammer. So I want the commission to be aware of that. In closing, the commission options, and we will go back through all of this after we hear testimony. Option 1 would be to uphold the appeals and make a tentative decision to deny the consolidated appeals. Or applications, excuse me, deny the consolidated applications. Option 2 would be to uphold in part and deny in part the appeals and make a tentative decision to modify the conditions of approval and approve the consolidated applications. Option 3 would be to deny the appeals and make a tentative decision to approve the application with no changes to the Planning Commission conditions of approval. Be happy to answer any questions now or happy to answer them later. Thank you.
I was just wondering if you could put the concept plan map. Jacob, could you go back to that particular slide? So what I was looking for is I was trying to find, I can see where Hawley is, but I see Swan. I'm not sure which one is supposed to be Livesay.
Livesay Road would be where the Civic Center and the green space dead ends on the concept plan map. And
Near where it says Village Green?
yeah, where it says Village
Oh, I
Green-
see Upper Livesay, Maine. Okay, right in there.
Livesay splits.
Okay, that's Livesay right there. Okay, that just gets me oriented that I know where it is in real life, but it looks different on this map. Okay. Ready to rock and roll?
Well, I think that summary is going to generate as many questions as it answers.
Yeah, I wrote down a whole bunch of them, but I'm not prepared to ask them now. I'll wait till after the public testimony.
Be prepared to furnish me a copy of this slideshow for future digestion. As the attorney said, there's so many issues at hand tonight. Those interpretations or those summaries given are one. Many of those are points of contention. Having read each of you the appeals, we'll go through it and decide accordingly. But as you said, there are so many, whether they be questions of bias, procedural, factual, reconciling conflicts, we'll have to deal with all that. You mentioned de novo review. Is this a de novo review?
De novo sort of connotates several different things, you know.
Can you explain to the audience what that is?
Sure. De novo means anew. You know, you look at it anew. And in this case, it's de novo in the sense that you don't owe any deference to what the Planning Commission did. You can make an entirely different decision. You're not saying, Planning Commission, you got it wrong. What you're doing is saying, here's what we think about these criteria. However, it is not de novo in that there's no new evidence coming in. You know, so you've got the record that's set beforehand, but you are making your own decision. You're not reviewing whether the Planning Commission was right or wrong.
Yes, we're making our own decision.
Well, that was interesting because in reading many of the communications, one suggestion was as soon as it became de novo, it opened the door to additional testimony. Is that not correct?
That is not correct. You
Okay.
are limited to the evidentiary record compiled before the Planning Commission, and you're limited to the issues that are identified in the appeals that were filed.
And maybe this will become clear in the course of the discussions. Maybe I need to wait, but there's a question about if this is 50% of the land mass and it does not provide 50% of the housing called for, is this a standalone consideration or are we going to be directed to saying, well, we'll make that up on the flip side?
I would suggest maybe listening to the arguments
Okay.
that come from the
And that's
testimony.
premature. I'll be glad to stand down and wait. Thanks.
Just another quick question. So just because it can have 900 and whatever the number was, doesn't mean it has to, does it? There's no minimum and maximum. I mean,
I'm sorry, I
I
apologize.
said, there was a number that was flashed up there that said that the concept plan called for, was it 936?
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean that that's an absolute, that we have to go to that number. That's what
The concept plan called for that number and said that most of the residential density will be located in the North Village.
In the North Village.
That's the language in the plan.
Yes, that's what I recall reading, yeah. Question? Okay, all right. Looks like we're ready to move on. So I have a list here of the order which people asked to be in, so I will definitely support that and go with that. So I think what would be good, since we have, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If I could just get people to come up 2 at a time, and do we want to move the item there that's in the center? Because I don't think we need to have that. So if I could get Mr. Jed Peterson and is it Roya Mansouri? Did I pronounce that correctly? If I did it wrong, just tell me.
Mayor, those are actually pre-recorded videos.
Right, okay. So we'll have those 2 first.
Chair, may I ask
Yes.
a procedural question? Oh, sorry. My procedural question is the appellants are going to make a presentation, and of course, the applicant has the right
Oh,
of
yes, they have 10 minutes. Right?
rebuttal.
Did I miss them?
Well, I'm curious as to what the sequence will be. Will it be an appellant followed by the applicant, or how are we going to do that tonight?
We have each of the 9 appellants, which will have 10 minutes, and the applicant will have 20. That's the order.
And they will follow with that?
Yes.
That's how we're going to do
Yeah.
it, 10, 20?
Okay, so
thank
we've
you.
got 2 videos of people who are doing testimony. This must be the lovely and delightful Mr. Peterson.
So Mayor McGriff, I apologize for interrupting. I have to register an objection to the order here. I thought we were going to have 20 minutes as the applicant with the burden of proof to give a presentation on the application. Then we would hear the appeal testimony in opposition, and we'd have 20 minutes for rebuttal. And I was hoping that's what we could do, because I think that since we are the party with the burden of proof, we would appreciate being able to give the commission an overview of the project and an explanation from our standpoint how we got
You might want to move the mic a little bit
here.
away from you. It's one of those things where it goes,
I apologize.
no, it's not your fault. It's the system, sorry.
So Mayor McGriff, our rules of procedure have the appellants
Okay.
going first, followed by the applicant, who follows the appellants.
Okay, sorry, it's in small letters here. I just was looking at all the names. Go right ahead.
So
No, I think Mr. Gebeisman was saying I was wrong.
Yeah, so the way that our rules of procedure are set out is the appellant goes first,
First.
because the
That's what
planning
I
commission
thought.
had
That's
made
why I was going to
the
Mr.
decision in their
Peterson.
favor, in the applicant's favor.
Right.
So can I clarify, because I thought we were going to have 20 minutes for presentation and then 20 minutes for rebuttal, but it sounds like,
So,
not sure how exactly that works.
Mayor McGriff, as you
Yes, as I
indicated,
read.
the appellants each get 10 minutes.
Right.
Then the applicant gets 20 minutes at the end of that.
Right,
Then we hear from anybody else
right.
withstanding.
That's what I read.
And then the applicant gets the final
Say.
say.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mayor, thank you, Bill, for the clarification.
Okay. So just to be clear, so we can go over that one more time. So we have, no, excuse me. No, excuse me.
Out of order.
4 minutes overtime.
Excuse me, Tom, could you please go back to your,
Give him to come up here.
Tom?
What kind of person?
Tom, would you please,
You allow them to go over 4 minutes.
Tom,
You said you
would
were
you
gonna cut
please
people
go
off.
back to your
You
seat?
said you were gonna cut people off if they went over their. I'm
Tom,
asking
would
if
you
you're gonna follow
please
your own
go
procedure.
back to your seat?
You're not fair. I'm watching complaint right now, Denise. It's not
Okay.
fair. You let them come out right now.
Tom?
But not us. When you go over.
Tom, please take a deep breath for a moment. We're trying to get through this. Yes, they did.
Let him come up.
I did not see him come up. I was looking at our staff. So no, he
That's
did.
out of procedure.
He did not have, I did not recognize him. The commission did not recognize him to come up. You have to be recognized, so please do not do that.
And they went over 4 minutes.
I understand that.
It was a clarification of procedure. It was not testimony being offered.
Oh, the clarification after came after the 4 minutes.
And we asked some questions which caused that to go over.
There was nothing of a factual basis presented for consideration by this commission. It was procedural.
Wrong.
Okay,
Well, and you're
please.
failing to agree to the terms of tonight's meeting, and I'm very disappointed in you.
Because Denise said.
Please do not
You're not on the
interrupt
microphone.
from the audience, please. Please. Everybody just take a deep cleansing breath right now. Just take a minute.
Jeez.
So we will proceed. Mr. Guile has a concern that I heard from the audience that we went 4 minutes over in the staff report. Commission, how would you like to deal with that, to be fair and equitable?
Well, first of all, we want to hear the staff report, so I don't mind if they went over, because I want to get as much information from our staff as we can. But how we address the other issue,
Mr. Morrow?
I was not aware that we had a fixed time for our
You said
staff report.
15 minutes.
Okay, because I thought that the time limits were for the applicants and the appellants, and so if they went over, I wanted to hear as much information as I could, and so I'm fine, as Commissioner Smith said.
The staff report is supposed to be the neutral framework within which future issues will be considered. Every item in the staff report has value, and omission, to me, would negatively impact the ability of this commission to make an effective decision. I've got no argument with the time of presentation.
Okay, and I apologize. I did not see Mr. Stevenson come up, and all of a sudden, he was just there in front of me, so I apologize. I was looking over at staff for some direction on the next step. So again, we will not have that. Do not come up here unless you are recognized by the commission, please. All right, so let's proceed with the video for Mr. Peterson.
Hello, I'm Jim Peterson, a resident of Oregon City. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight about a pre-recorded video. I'm covering a remote hospital and unable to attend the meeting in person tonight. hope to be able to listen in during the meeting, but with my variable schedule caring for patients tonight, this may not be possible. First, I implore City Council to reject the proposal. It is clear by all those who have attended the preceding meetings and reviewed the materials that ICON's original submission was incomplete and inaccurate. The included maps fail to show known waterways and creeks that are present in the planned development. Personally, my house built in 2017 wasn't even on the submitted map entitled Current Conditions. Subsequent responses and submissions by ICON have been similarly disappointing at best and have failed to meet the requirements. This brings me to my first concern and relevant violation of the planning requirement. The procedural issue regarding Oregon City Community Development planning requirement reads as follows. Submittal of a land use application. The application will be deemed complete or incomplete within 30 days. If the application is incomplete, the applicant is responsible for resubmitting the required information within 180 days of the original submittal date. The submitted plan was shown to be incomplete and was found to have a number of factual errors and omissions. As such, the application should have been deemed incomplete and the applicant should have resubmitted the required information within 180 days of the original date. Several public hearings occurred despite the application not meeting these requirements. The developer continued to modify their application over the course of those hearings and even now has not met the requirement for a submittal of a land use application. This lack of a complete application is evidenced by the fact that at several public hearings, ICON requested a continuance in order to prepare additional documentation and responses and was unable to speak on behalf of their incomplete application. This brings me to my second argument. This argument is that the proposal does not fulfill a wide variety of codified requirements. 12.04025.180 regarding street design minimum right-of-way. The proposal does not meet the standards for a minor arterial type street. Minimum width of 88 feet for a minor arterial road is a requirement listed in the table. Although the developer has noted that required variance for this pinch point, they have not proposed an adequate solution. This requirement is essential for making the streets safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, cars, emergency vehicles, etc. Furthermore, the required park is not in Phase 1, and to travel to the park from Phase 1 housing will require traversing a minor arterial street that does not meet the municipal code. As such, this proposal fails to address on multiple levels the needs and requirements of the Park Place Plan and the municipal code. 16.08.025 regarding preliminary subdivision plans, requirements, traffic impact study that assesses the traffic for the proposed development on the existing transportation system and analyzes the adequacy was performed during the peak of COVID-19 closures. Many businesses and schools were not in person during this analyzed timeframe. Even with that flawed study, it was noted that the intersection of Redland Lane and OR 213 would be unable to handle the anticipated traffic. And that's not even taking into account the new developments that were being put in place at that point and would be impacted by this development as well. 17.21.090, garages and accessory structures. This requirement is that garages must be detached side entry or rear entry. The garage shall not be located in the front of the living area. The developer has not submitted a plan compliant with this code. When this was noted by the staff in early public hearing meetings, the developer ignored this requirement and pressed ahead with this non-compliant proposal. Even later revisions to their plans have not resulted in compliance with this municipal code. 17.16.040. This is regarding driveway access and parking. Off-street parking shall be accessed on the back facade or located in the rear yard. Again, the plan was shown to be non-compliant and the developers pressed on without regard to the city ordinances. 17.44.010. To ensure that activities and geologic hazards are designated based on detailed knowledge of site conditions in order to reduce the risk of private and public losses. The plan clearly puts the public and the new development at risk with a variety of known geologic hazards, including but not limited to flooding and landslides. This is evidenced by the hazards map, but was not addressed in ICON's proposal. This ties in with code issue 17.44.050. Application requirements and review procedures and approvals in regards to hazards. The level of detail required to fulfill this municipal code has not been met. Furthermore, the submitted application contained factual errors where maps were shown to be discordant with readily available geologic boundary maps showing hazards. Who can forget the forest fires of 2020, when there were long delays to evacuate and many residents gave up returning home as they couldn't get out of their neighborhoods? This brings me to the course of events that occurred September 12th, 2022. As outlined in several appeals, the procedural process was deeply flawed. A commissioner was supposedly reached via personal cell phone, not by city staff, to cast a new vote and break the tie. There was no transparency about what ex parte contact may have occurred to occasion the late participation by that commissioner. He had not been present for the deliberations prior to joining the meeting to cast his vote. For the vote to be meaningful, one would assume that the commissioner had been present for the deliberations and listened to the public comment prior to casting that deciding vote. It wasn't clear to anyone at the meeting that they had even verified the identity of the late arriving tie-breaking vote. The fact that this person was contacted via another developer in the audience to cast this tie-breaking vote screams of quid pro quo. As noted in Ordinance 07-1007, changes to the Park Place concept plan must be approved via addendums. As such, they need to be reviewed by the public and accepted before the concept plan can be changed. As the general development plan varies greatly from the concept plan, these addendums must be completed before a development plan is accepted. As you are well aware, these addendums have not occurred. The process has been such a public relations disaster for ICON that they had Harlan Barlow, a resident of Tigard, write an insulting diatribe with a false narrative. ICON pleads that they are trying to fulfill the original objectives of the Park Place concept, and yet they have failed to address the most pressing issues. Instead, they try to maximize profit by squeezing in as many homes as possible without concern of threatened lives and existing codes. Connector roads are required, and yet that is not their priority or in the immediate plans. They asked to move forward with a wink-wink intention to build a road in the future with no enforceable requirement. That is unacceptable. We, the citizens of Oregon City, will suffer, and they will laugh all the way to the bank in West Lynn, avoiding our traffic challenges in Oregon City. As outlined above, they have requested a number of variances that will damage the neighborhood and leave a permanent scar on the community. In short, they have requested to squeeze homes in the neighborhood without the required alleys and garage design that are vital to ensure safety and walkability of the communities. Again, this is to maximize their profits. This plan has been accurately described as horrible during the public hearings. ICON's traffic report was grossly inaccurate, performed during the peak of COVID-19 restrictions. Over the past year, episodes of long delays between OR 213 and Holcomb Boulevard have worsened. The intersection of OR 213 and Redland will not handle the anticipated growth, even without this development. The flawed traffic report could not gloss over this fact in their analysis, and there is no solution in sight. Again, recall the traffic jam during the forest fires. Lives were at risk, and this will only exacerbate the potential danger for not only new residents, but also the existing ones. Again, I ask that you reject this proposal. These meetings have come at a great cost in terms of time consumed, and the only people who are clearly benefiting from this prolonged process have been the attorneys. Thank you for your time.
Go ahead with the next one.
Ladies and gentlemen of the City Commission, thank you for the opportunity to submit this appeal in a recorded video. I realize that this is not part of your normal process, and I appreciate your willingness to allow this testimony. The task in front of you is enormous. This is the largest development project that has ever been presented to the City of Oregon City. Testimony started in April, and throughout these 7 months, the project has been plagued with irregularities, inconsistencies, and a high degree of public opposition. My testimony tonight will focus on procedural issues that occurred at the September 12th Planning Commission meeting. While I am not an attorney, these issues do not pass the simple smell test and are obvious to the common lay person. I have discussed these concerns with our legal counsel, who concurs with our opinion. At the September 12th Planning Commission meeting, when the motion to approve the application ended in a 3-3 tie, Chair Schlagenhofer noted that the Planning Commission was given 2 options by the city staff: to approve or to deny the general development plan application. He sought advice from City Attorney Mr. Bill Cabasman, who opined that the math could be changed either by the departure or recusal of a commissioner that was present, or by the addition of a commissioner that was absent. He suggested that it may be possible for the commissioners to engage in additional discussion to try and change the minds of other commissioners, but then he finally concluded with the situation at hand, which was a tied and deadlocked vote. Just after the 1 hour mark in the meeting, he suggested a recess to consult the municipal code to see what should be done, but opined that the likely scenario was to defer the vote until a future meeting when all of the commissioners are present.
We've got two options. There's two options in the staff report. We got an option for approval, we got an option for denial.
Let's see.
We got 1 and 2. We got number 1, number 2. The question is, if we can't agree on either one, then where are we at?
Right now we've had a motion for approval that failed because of a tie vote, 3-3. We haven't seen if a motion for denial would succeed or fail. Presumably, if the votes stay the same, it would fail as well for failure to get a majority. At that point, there are somewhat limited options. One is if a planning commissioner were to leave the meeting, that would change the math. If the absent planning commissioner could be contacted to appear and we're able to make it, that would change the math of the meeting. Otherwise, there could be discussion among the commissioners to see if there is some reason why a commissioner would be willing to change their vote, whether through convincing that the current one should be done differently, or additional discussion among the planning commission. To the extent there is no motion that can succeed, I want to take a quick recess after further discussion with the planning commission to look into what happens on a failure to reach a decision. I believe what happens is it gets continued to the next meeting, and hopefully we'd have a full complement at that point.
No recess was called, the municipal code was not referenced, and a new motion was made that was subsequently passed. A reading of OCMC 2.24.080 states that, quote, if a quorum is present, all matters shall be decided by a vote of the majority, end quote. There is no provision that votes can end in a tie. Therefore, at this point, the motion should have ended in a denial of the motion. Based on this information, we believe that the decision of the Oregon City Planning Commission should be overturned and the Park Place Crossing General Development Plan should be denied. The second and more egregious procedural issue occurs scant minutes later, after a second motion to approve the application. A perplexed city staff member is interrupted by an audience member and handed a cell phone. She then states that Commissioner Staggs, who was absent at roll call, is on the phone. There is no verification that the person on the phone was actually Commissioner Staggs. There was no disclosure of any ex parte contacts. The person on the cell phone has not been party to any of the discussion that has occurred for the last hour, but was told he could vote. No discussion whatsoever was held prior to the request of his answer.
Was that? I didn't hear exactly what your motion was.
It was a repeat of Daphne's motion.
Okay. And I'm sorry to interrupt again. It looks like, thank you, we have Chris Staggs on the phone.
Maybe he was watching. Okay. Is Commissioner Staggs prepared to vote on the motion?
Hold on. Commissioner Staggs, can you hear me? Oh, let me turn it. Can you say that one more time? Can you hear me?
Okay, so for the record, Commissioner Staggs has joined us at 7:53 via an additional cell phone. And I don't know, Commissioner Staggs, I don't know if you heard Commissioner Stoll's motion. So maybe Commissioner Stoll can repeat the motion and we'll try that again.
My motion is to approve with the additional conditions, GLUA 21-00045, MAS 21-00006, and VAR 22-00001.
Okay. And we have a motion, and we have a second. The second remains, so call to vote, please.
Commissioner Craig Stahl.
Aye.
Commissioner Daphne West.
Aye.
Commissioner Bob LaSalle.
No.
Vice Chair Mike Mitchell.
No.
Chair Dirk Schlagenhofer.
No.
Commissioner Patty Gage.
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Staggs.
Yes.
Pass.
Motion passes.
The individual on the phone says only one audible word in the entire recording, and that was to cast the tie-breaking yes vote in favor of approving the application. What proof do we or the Planning Commission have that this individual was Commissioner Staggs and not a member of the ICON development team? The call was not initiated by the city staff, so how do we know who was on the phone? As best as can be seen in the video recording of the Planning Commission meeting, this was not a video call. So how do we know it was not someone impersonating Commissioner Staggs? Furthermore, the individual who claimed that Commissioner Staggs was on the phone was a developer named Derek Metzen, who is the principal architect of Greenblocks Architecture. He was waiting to testify in front of the Planning Commission in an unrelated case. The fact that the developer had a planning commissioner's personal cell phone number and that commissioner was ready to cast an uninformed vote raises the question of the partiality of that planning commissioner. The fact that there was no disclosure of ex parte contact means that there was no opportunity for anyone to question him for any conflict of interest. The final vote was 4 yea to 3 nay, resulting in the passage of the application. The tie-breaking vote should not have been allowed, and the resultant 3-3 tie should have stood, resulting in a failure of the motion and a denial of the application. The fact that there was not one, but two very serious procedural violations supersede really any other argument. Not only did the planning commissions receive incorrect advice from their lawyer and thereby did not follow appropriate procedural rules, but they allowed a second vote to be conducted using the private cell phone of a developer without verifying the identity of the alleged commissioner. This creates a situation where the vote does not appear legal or transparent and significantly erodes any trust that the voters and citizens of Oregon City have in the review process. The Planning Commission, or any government entity for that matter, should be doing everything in their power to ensure that protocol is followed meticulously. The needs of their citizens are met and considered, and their rights are not trampled by moving forward with an obviously irregular and potentially illegal sequence of events.
Seconds.
28.
You want to hear the rest of the 28 seconds, even though it's over the 10 minutes?
We're going to be very strict on that. I think we should stay with the 10 minutes.
Nope, they said that. Nope. So we have 3 videos then. So there was Enoch's and then Roy. Do we have Roya's next?
I believe Enoch is in the crowd. He has a presentation.
Okay, well, there was a live, well, that's what the name was on the thing. So I don't, who was that on there? Because they didn't say who they were. Was that the second? Was that Roya?
That was Roya.
Okay, but Enoch's name appeared on the bottom of the screen, which is why I was a little confused. Okay, all right. So you're up. And then would Mr. Nacita come up? You're next? give
is
you a
on?
second.
Okay. Is there a way I can get the advancer clicker? Sorry.
Don't you just love technology?
Which direction should I point the clicker?
Whichever works for you. We
Over
have,
there,
we have them on our screen in front of us. It's mainly, you've got this for the public, and I'm sorry for the acute angle for those in the back.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen of the City Commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you. Having read through the 109-page document from the applicants.
For the record.
Oh, my name is Enoch Wong, Oregon City. Having read through the 109-page document from the applicant, I'm glad that this hearing tonight is not a court of law and that we can speak plainly to each other. If the applicant had their way, you would only be able to hear appeals from wealthy individuals and corporations, depriving the working citizens of Oregon City the opportunity to demonstrate their earnest objection, their steadfast opposition, and their passionate resolve. Your decision to waive the appeal fee levels the playing field and provides full and equitable discussion. While the applicant may be frustrated with the amount of work this decision has added to their workload, they ignore the extra work incurred by Oregon City citizens who have sacrificed time with their family, work, and sleep in order to allow their voices to be heard. Given the short amount of time that we were given to review the applicant's late response, we request that the record from tonight's meeting be left open so that we can respond to some of their statements. Otherwise, our substantial rights will be prejudiced. For my appeal, I will be addressing two topics tonight. The first relates to Clackamas County Ordinance 07-1007, and the second is a preemptive rebuttal to an anticipated appeal of several NROD-related conditions of approval that were put in place by the Planning Commission. This is the ordinance adopting the Park Place Concept Plan as part of Oregon City Comprehensive Plan. This was enacted by the Commission on April 2nd, 2008. This ordinance anticipated the need for further amendments to the comprehensive plan, noting that additional editing and refinement will inevitably be necessary after adoption. It further states that these amendments are to be reviewed in a public hearing. This clause forms the crux of the argument that the application before the City Commission must be rejected because, as prior testimony presented to the Oregon City Planning Commission has demonstrated, there is a need for additional editing and refinement and a need for an amended concept plan, comprehensive plan. We have heard over and over again from citizens who have been involved since the creation of the concept plan just how different the general development plan is from the key concept plans. Yet the city staff has stated in their staff reports that the applicant's proposal is consistent with the concept plan or that it will be consistent if they follow certain conditions of approval. Despite the applicant's assertion that the general development plan is consistent with the concept plan, a review of testimony given illustrates that these key components of the concept plan are not included as originally envisioned. Other appellants will be able to describe these deviations from the concept plan with much more detail, but unfortunately what we have gotten is not what was envisioned. Consider what the creators of these works of art must have felt when presented with these final results. Similarly, consider the parallels between the concept plan and the general development plan. What we have here is a classic case of a square peg being forced into a round hole. Simply put, according to Chair Schlagenhofer's reasonable interpretation of County Ordinance 07-1007, if the concept plan does not match the land and the development is going to deviate substantially from the original concept, the concept plan should first be amended rather than just accepting that square peg as our only option. The applicant has provided many reasons why their square peg cannot be made into a round one. Among their examples, they cite the requirement to have a certain number of lots in development. But it is just this situation that would require changing the shape of both the hole and the peg until they fit.
I remember one of the things that brought up early was with the land not matching the concept plan exactly, the buildable lot sizes got smaller. And and that's where a lot of the variances requested came from, the ones we're discussing tonight. And I asked Ms. Kelly Reed at the time, there's got to be some kind of a bottom to it. We couldn't have a concept plan for an area that's 91 acres, find out there's only 10 buildable acres, and then possibly fit all those units in the remaining 10 acres. And she said that there was no minimum. And I don't know what meeting that was, but that's what she said. There was no minimum lot size. But clearly that makes no sense. That we can't put that many units in 10 buildable acres if that's what we found. That's not what we found, but that's what the answer was. And I think at that point, that's when the concept plan would have to be amended. Because clearly we don't have what we thought we had. And we don't have that drastic of a situation, but it's definitely it's a situation where the concept plan and the land and reality don't match. And it makes us wonder if the concept plan should have been amended.
Recognizing that the City Commission can only make decisions based on city code or county ordinances, we point to Ordinance 07-1007 as the justification to exercise your power to uphold the appeals and deny the application before you. After listening to testimony regarding the Natural Resource Overlay District governed by OCMC 17.49, the Planning Commission instituted 3 conditions of approval. Basically, they have asked that all areas that were not included in the initial NROD report be delineated by OCMC 17.49, that the applicant formally verify the NROD boundaries related to Sharman Creek, and that all of this should be reviewed by a third-party consultant. By way of background, the source documents for NROD review include the 1999 local wetland inventory. The eastern half of the subject property was not annexed until much later, almost 20 years since the local wetland inventory was updated, and it is not included. The official NROD boundary map is also out of date. The green boundaries stop abruptly at the urban growth boundary and do not include any areas in the eastern half of the subject property. The OCMC specifically states, quote, however, the adopted map may not indicate the true location of protected features, end quote. As was pointed out by the applicant, only the City Commission can initiate the amendment of an NROD map, but this is not the proper forum for that discussion. The applicant does provide a wetland inventory and identifies 4 wetlands, but states that none of these wetlands are within an NROD boundary. The particular wetlands of interest are labeled A and D. According to the NROD map update that was provided in the application, there is a creek that approaches the subject property from the southeast, but it falls short of the eastern boundary at the intersection of tax lots 1,000 and 400. There is cause to question the accuracy of this map, as the USGS quadrangle map of the same area shows 2 branches of Sharman Creek that extend onto the subject property. While the USGS map is not considered a source document for the Planning Commission, this map, which was actually provided in the application materials, does raise the question of what is in fact present. The reason that this one area of Sharman Creek is significant is because the pinch point is critical to the applicant's access to the southwest portion of the subject property. The pinch point could lie wholly within an NROD boundary, which could significantly alter the designs. It is therefore right and just for conditions of approval 17 to require a full mapping of Sharman Creek along the border of tax lots 1,000 and 400 to ensure that they are asking for permission rather than forgiveness. Independent verification eliminates the potential bias that naturally exists when the only on-site information comes from the applicant. These excerpts from the May 23rd letter from the applicant to the Planning Commission outline several reasons why the applicant objects to these conditions of approval. As far as the first, it is obvious why the applicant does not propose a revision to the NROD boundary, as it might hurt their chances to obtain approval. Conversely, though, it is just as likely that a formal delineation might find no wetlands in that area. Their second point is that none of the wetlands exist within an NROD boundary, but I believe that we have already addressed the out-of-date source material. Finally, the applicant states that the Department of State Lands concurs with their wetland and waterway boundaries in the AKS delineation report. However, the DSL report specifically states this concurrence is for the purposes of state removal fill law only. The purpose of OCMC 17.49 is to protect the wetlands of Oregon City, I'm not catching up. Yes, this is it. The purpose of OCMC 17.49 is to protect the wetlands of Oregon City while recognizing that development is expected. It provides a framework for integrating wetland protection with existing neighborhoods as well as with new residential and commercial developments. Common sense dictates that one make informed decisions with as much information as possible, not to hide behind out-of-date maps that do not include the subject property. These decisions should be made with full transparency in order to foster trust between the citizens and the city. And for this reason, we feel strongly that these conditions of approval should remain. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Mr. Wiley, can the people sitting at the table see the countdown clock?
Yes, there's a clock right here.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure where it was. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was very thorough. Can I have Christine Kaczynski come up? Mr. Nacita, you're next, sir.
Thank you, Mayor McGriff. Commissioners, I will be referring to, I didn't extract it as a separate slide, but on tonight's revised agenda packet under public hearings, there is a document about a little more than halfway down called GLU 0045, Planning Commission Final Revised Findings, 9/12/2022. It's the longest hyperlink on that agenda list. And I would like to direct the commission's attention to page 65 of that document. I'll be referring to it a little later.
What page?
I might need some time to navigate to it. So I have three issues. The first one has to do with the Holly extension. Before the Planning Commission, I addressed this in some detail regarding the city's authority to make that connection, notwithstanding the fact that the land needed for that extension is not in the city limits. And I cited two things. One is in my appeal, which is ORS 223-930, which the legislature has given Oregon City express authority to build a road outside of the city limits, and even to condemn land outside of the city limits to build a connecting road. And I also, before the Planning Commission, cited a LUBA case. It was Butte Conservancy versus City of Gresham, LUBA number 2006-084 from 2006. LUBA upheld the City of Gresham land use approval that included a condition of approval requiring construction of a road outside of the city limits and in Clackamas County if it was quote unquote legally feasible to do so. And what they actually said in that instance was, at the time of the approval, they couldn't make a determination whether a condemnation judge would permit condemnation or provide, require too much compensation, et cetera. But because the legal avenue of condemnation exists, that was sufficient to make the condition of approval legal, because the legal pathway was there. Now, that is a very similar case to what we have in this application, because the Holly connector south of Livesey to Redland Road is in Clackamas County. But you do have the authority through this statute and through this specific case precedent to require a condition of approval that no development will occur until that connection is completed. We have that in our transportation system plan with, a very large amount of funding for that connection. And the city has the legal authority to acquire and construct that road. Or similarly, the applicant has the legal entitlement to buy the property for that connector with that legal right, that you can base the approval on, even though we don't know at this point whether that actually will happen. It's just the legal feasibility of either purchase or either condemnation authorizes you to put that condition of approval in this development proposal. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And obviously, our street standards are clear and objective, so you don't have a problem with that either. And that connector road would actually bolster the feasibility of the Live C Main Street commercial, because people would be able to come up from the south and enjoy those commercial areas and help them succeed. Okay, so that's almost half of it. So I'm going to move down to my second issue, and I want to preface it with something that the applicant raised about raising the issues. They cited Bowles versus Clackamas County when I was familiar with that case, and I'll quote what the Court of Appeals adopted as far as the Luba case. The court said, quoting Luba and adopting Luba, "We do not believe ORS 197-7631 requires that petitioners have presented the identical arguments during local proceedings that are later presented in the petition for review at Luba." So beware of trying to be convinced that issues and arguments are the same, all right? Issues are broad, arguments are more specific, and you can raise different arguments within the issues that you present in your appeal. And in fact, on my next issue, I do raise some new arguments. And that is where I would like to draw your attention to page 65 of the Planning Commission's findings, because there's a map in there that I think kind of encapsulates the problems that I have with this development proposal. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, if you look at all the pink squares, that's the NC commercial zone. And some of, you can see that what is shown in the purple to the right doesn't occupy all of that NC zone. They're allowing community park into the NC zone. In fact, that one stretch of green to the left obviates or removes all of the NC zoning for commercial use and allows the park to come right up to Livesey Road. That is in conflict with the Park Place concept plan. It's called a Baker conflict. When you have a conflict between what's permitted in a zone, like park and stormwater, and what the plan requires, the Baker case says when there's a conflict like that, the plan controls. So even if the NC zone allows parks and stormwater facilities, the plan does not. Plan does not allow those uses in the area that's designed for the Main Street commercial area, which is supposed to be like a little downtown with a building wall. Ms. Richter said that there's a condition of approval requiring 2 stories. I don't see that. Maybe she can point it out, but I don't see it. And another thing I'd like to draw your attention to in those purple squares, it says retail, MUCNC, civic, and then village green. Doesn't say which one will be there. And so here's the danger. This appears to me to allow all of that to be village green and just a bunch of grass and no commercial for the Main Street Village, which is a key component to the Park Place concept plan, because the bigger strategy of the concept plan, its livability strategy, was to allow less auto trips to get your services. They wanted you to be able to walk and bicycle down to get some good portion of your services and products, so you don't have to drive out of the neighborhood, jam up Holcomb, create pollution, etc. But this doesn't guarantee that at all. This leaves it all up to the developer to decide whether he's going to put a store there or whether it's just going to be, attractive grass. There's no requirement to follow the concept plan. And I'm requesting conditions of approval that follows the concept plan with retail on the ground floor on all of those NC blocks with at least one level of residential above, which would fulfill the strategy that was developed for the concept plan. The last point I'm going to make in the 35 seconds I have has to do with the Main Street design standards. They call them Main Street standards in the appendix, and examples are given in the appendix. Ms. Richter unfortunately mischaracterized what I want or what I think the plan requires. She said, I want you to deny them because they're not here now. That's not what I said. I wanted a condition of approval that they would be promulgated before a detailed development plan is reviewed. And you can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Christine. Hang on just a second. Linda, you're next on deck. Linda Smith. No, I'm just getting the next person teed up to come up. Well, that's not how it is on this list that I was given of your preferences, so don't talk from the audience. So I've got Christine, Linda, Jackie, Mr. Guerrero, and then Tom is last. Okay, hang on again. Please don't talk from the audience. So what are we doing, staff?
The request originally had been for the Park Place Neighborhood Association as lead appellant, followed by Linda Smith, followed by Jackie Hammond-Williams.
Okay, so.
Tom being the spokesperson for Park Place Neighborhood Association.
Okay, so I have, as I said, I have Linda, Jackie, Mr. Guerrero, and Tom. So what am I changing this to?
Tom first.
Tom would be next after Christine?
Yep.
Okay, then Tom, come tee up. Okay, so then Linda is after Tom. Just nod. Okay, Linda's after Tom, and then Jackie's after Linda. Okay, got it. And then where's the lovely and delightful Mr. Guerrero? Yes, just hang on. So you're going to be after Jackie? Yes or no? No, I'm talking to the person behind. I'm asking him to nod. Whatever you want. I'm trying to get staff to help me to make sure I get the right order. Okay, so you're going to be number 4. Okay, all right, I got it. Thank you. I'm just trying to read off the paper. Okay, Christine, please. Thank you so much for the interruption. I'm so sorry. Just want to make sure everybody gets their opportunity.
Christine Kosinski, unincorporated Clackamas County.
Is the green light on?
Yes. Push. Yep. It's on.
Okay, all right.
Oh, there, okay, sorry. Christine Kosinski, unincorporated Clackamas County. The city has failed to meet its own comprehensive plan, where it states landslides can be triggered by heavy rain, ground shaking from earthquakes, and heavy traffic, altering drainage and undercutting the slope. The city also fails to meet the State of Oregon Land Use Goals 1, 7, 12, and 13, and ORS 105.465, which are the property disclosure laws, as well as state DLCD, Dogami landslide hazard guidelines, and the Oregon City addendum to the FEMA Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, which requires the city to use the mitigation plan to help the city's comprehensive plan use plan to meet the land use planning goal 7, designed to protect. designed to protect life and property from natural disasters and hazards through planning strategies that restrict development in areas of known hazards. Goal 1 has been violated. The city has seriously breached its requirements under Goal 1 by purposefully and neglectfully not sending notices to any of the homeowners on Holly Lane outside of the UGB who are directly affected by any development taking place in the Holly Lane Redland area. This has been going on for 18 years. These people have been completely in the dark, and the city wants their street. They've had no chance to defend themselves. Goal 7 is to protect people and property from natural hazards, requiring local governments to adopt comprehensive plans and to reduce risk to people and property from natural hazards. Good planning does not put buildings or people in harm's way. However, the Park Place Crossing development does all of this by densely building in a very hazardous area, by not following the above goals, 1, 7, 12, the FEMA plan, the DLCD plan, and the city's own comprehensive plan. There are no roads to support this heavy development. And in my testimony of May 9th of this year to Oregon City Planning Commission, I supported this information by giving them previous discussions between the planning commissioners about the use of Holly Lane and whether it's really safe. Things that were said were something like, Pete, I appreciate this, but I do not see how, in any universe, we could ever get this on Holly Lane, ever. It's just not. This could never happen on Holly Lane. I just have to say that for the record. Another commissioner said, I wish there was a way we could recommend that the TSP be amended to take substantial portions of Holly Lane out, because I think it's a fool's errand to think that we're going to do anything. I mean, I don't see it ever happening. And why? We've got geologic hazards. There are just so many impediments to Holly Lane. It's not funny. Another commissioner stated, yes, we recognize Holly Lane is an impossible dream. We think what we're suggesting is the status of Holly Lane in the TSP be reconsidered based on the reality of jurisdiction over the road. The city of Oregon City, has no jurisdiction over the road, nor do we want jurisdiction until it gets adopted. And then the last commissioner stated, Holly Lane is an impossible dream. And then after this, about 2 months later, in another planning commission meeting, Holly Lane came up again. And it was stated, the biggest issue that I think we heard about all of this with regard to traffic and transportation was Holly Lane. And I know many of you have been on there, but maybe not lately. We are very concerned about Holly Lane. It is severely constrained, and it is unlikely that in any near future of our lifetimes that the county is going to have any money, or that we would have sufficient money to make it a minor arterial. We would like to see at the very least that we are looking at putting either amending the TSP to remove a portion of Holly Lane, or at least putting an asterisk by it so that we know it is a constrained facility. I recently spoke to Professor Scott Burns about the road issue. I had done some soil studies on the Park Place crossing boundaries and was really pretty shocked at some of the soil studies I had found. And so I reached out to Dr. Burns. He was not available. He was going out of town, and he asked me to deliver this message to the Planning Commission, which he also sent me an affidavit for. Scott Burns goes on to say, Mrs. Kaczynski called me on Saturday, May 21st of this year, regarding Oregon City's proposal to build a Swan Road extension connecting into Morton Road near Holly Lane. After discussing her concerns, I asked Mrs. Kaczynski to give the Planning Commission my following message. Oregon City should call Professor Bill Burns of Dogami and discuss the proposed plan for construction of the Swan Road extension, which will connect into Morton Road. The city city should go by the recommendations made by Professor Bill Burns. Then Scott Burns added that all recommended work must be performed at the Morton Road connection, done only by certified geotechnical engineers and certified engineer and geologist. I had attached to the city the thesis by Bill Burns of Dogami. His thesis was written about the big, huge Morton Road landslide. Goal 12, the traffic report. I don't agree with it. There's 476 homes being proposed. It used to be the ITE manual said, okay, 10 homes per car per day. So that comes out to, I believe, a little over 9,500 cars per day, not the puny, like 20 cars in the AM peak hour. So I don't agree with that at all. Landslide insurance, both the city and the homeowners on Holly Lane are well aware there's no landslide insurance available in the world. If someone tells you Lloyd's of London will offer it, they're wrong. Lloyd's of London has one criteria that stops people from getting landslide insurance. And that is, if you live within a mile of a previous landslide, you're going to be denied. That means that everybody on Holly Lane, everybody that's going to buy a home in Park Place Crossing, they're going to be denied. So, is the city going to pay for liability? Something needs to be done. I also want to bring your attention to the preliminary geotechnical engineering report that was done by GeoPacific in March of this year. In my testimony of May 23rd, the bottom of page 1, the city did not have the money at the time in 2005 to do in-depth studies, but the city did a preliminary study at that time, but it was so preliminary that the consultant really could do nothing. So now we've got another preliminary study done by GeoPacific. And when I read the report, there is so much to be concerned about. I requested that the city order a geological study of the entire boundaries within the Park Place plan. And I felt that the study done by GeoPacific had been very revealing and just furthers my deep concerns over any development taking place in this area. I do highlight the 4 earthquake faults running through this area, capable of generating serious damages. And I continue to read the geotechnical report. I note that soil creeping is mentioned in several areas, and that because of subsurface waters, some homes will have drains in the walls and in the roofs and in the crawl space areas. The water in the crawl space may be there all the time. These are drains to drain the water away. That's how much water is up there. These homes also will have a vapor barrier underneath and will need annual maintenance. GeoPacific did find some new landslides in their study, and their report speaks of putting in retaining walls and soldier walls just to keep the land from sliding. I asked the city not to close the hearing tonight on August 22nd. I asked that they order the in-depth geological study. The city attorney found a law in her book, and she explained to the Planning Commission that they did not have to honor my request to keep the hearing open until in-depth studies could be done. I am extremely concerned about the soil conditions existing at the intersection of Holly Lane and Redland Road, says Scott Burns. In a worst-case scenario, the roads could just cave in and collapse altogether under a heavy rainfall. I have stated to Christine
your time is up.
that the intersection is highly complicated.
Sorry, your time is up. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. I appreciate your coming in, or I should say we appreciate your coming in. Hang on 2 seconds, Tom. Is this where I jump up and say, okay, now we're going to do a little yoga exercise? I'm might have to do that. I was just saying it might be time in the next 10 minutes that I jump up and say, we're going to do a quick yoga stretch. So put my teacher training skills to work on your behalf. Mr. Guile,
Where's the clicker for control?
let's get the clicker.
Before I begin, I'd like to apologize to my commissioners up there.
That's fine.
We've all prepared a lot for tonight, and I was going specifically off what you said. Everyone was going to be cut off. We didn't realize that you might want
It's
to hear from
fine.
the staff.
There's no apology
I
needed.
heard a lot of people going like this in the
But
audience
thank you.
behind me.
Yes,
So I apologize.
We'll let them police you. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Tom.
I'm Tom Guile. I represent the Park Place Neighborhood Association. I'd like to begin. Oh, it's not clicking before you. Which one do I hit to click it?
It should be the button on the right-hand side.
The right-hand side one? Right there?
Yeah.
Okay, I've never used this before.
Try it just to see if it works before your time starts. Just click one, so see if it works.
Okay, there it
There you
goes.
go. All right, perfect.
So I'd like to begin. I'm only an individual, a resident of the city. I'm not a high-polished attorney like icons. I'm not even a city attorney or a deputy attorney. And what she mentioned earlier about the ordinance, I was so confused. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience were. So I'd like to explain what is an ordinance, the simple definition that I looked up on the internet. An ordinance is a law or decree by a municipality. It put differently, an ordinance is a local
Could you
law.
pause the time for just,
Sorry.
we're getting a lot of like that.
I
so-
guess it's too close. You know me speaking loud.
Yep.
I want to make sure everybody back there can hear me.
Yeah, but it's killing my eardrums.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
So,
You were stopped, so you didn't lose any time.
so put differently, an ordinance is a local law. Usually ordinances forbid or restrict some type of activity. What's the difference between an ordinance and a law? Unlike a statute or a state law, an ordinance is a local law that is passed by municipal governing authorities, such as a city council or a county board of commissioners. Ordinances also apply only to the local jurisdiction as opposed to the entire state. The Park Place Concept Plan was adopted by the Oregon City Ordinance 07-1007 on 10/10/2008. This concept plan was the work of several residents along with the city representatives over several months of meetings. What's next here, it's too small to see it all, but that's a copy of what the ordinance looked like. So I'd like to point out a few things on it to you. Whereas statements 9 and 10, whereas in a project of this area, this size and scope, additional editing and refinement will inevitably be necessary after adoption, and whereas further amendments to the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan and map and zoning code and map will be necessary, underscored, will be necessary in order to implement the Park Place Concept Plan, and those amendments will be considered and reviewed in a duly noticed public hearing, which, next line, will be mailed to all Oregon City residents and interested parties in compliance with Measure 56E, I think it says, not just Park Place. Mayor Alice Norris' signature right there, and it's dated April 1st, 2008, but then it was filed with the Sherry Hall and the city records 10/10/2008. So the supposition here, the residents of Park Place neighborhood are innocent bystanders of a system that's gone wrong. We presumed that a concept plan in an ordinance would be followed to the letter of the law. We presume that possibly a large turnover of a planning department staff with newer staff may not have been aware of the requirements of this legally required ordinance. In either case, this large development plan should not have gone forward in the first place without following the intent of the ordinance. I guess mine skipped here. As there's been no notice or meetings that specifically amends the Park Place Concept Plan, all of the provisions of that plan, our ordinance, are currently in force. The current Park Place Crossing General Development Plan is efficient and meeting several of those provisions. Livability and safety are major concerns. A major portion of the Park Place Concept Plan was 2 north-south connector roads through the North Village, Swan Avenue and Holly Lane to alleviate traffic on Holcomb Boulevard and to move traffic from the new development of nearly 500, it's now 426, homes to the south, rather than traveling throughout the development to Holcomb and clogging up Holcomb. The neighborhoods off Holcomb, off Winston Drive, have only one way in and one way out on a half-block Winston Drive. During the fire evacuations of 2 years ago, it took our residents an hour, I guess I didn't flip it, I'm sorry. It took our residents an hour and more to exit out of neighborhoods just to get onto Holcomb, and then another hour to get down to 213 due to the traffic coming from outer Clackamas County. What if another evacuation should become necessary? How could another 426 homes be able to escape? The PPC states in page 66, Transportation Item 2, quote, a network of local and higher order streets that provides redundancy for emergency access, appropriate ventilation to neighborhoods and commercial nodes of activity, and efficient connections to minimize travel distances, unquote. The key in this paragraph is the redundancy for emergency access. Without the southbound connectors to Redland, there is no redundancy and emergency access would be severely impacted. On this map, I can't point it out to you, but I want you to see those arrows. All those homes down below in the south part of that map up there, all those homes are gonna have to come up all the way up the Holly Lane there and go all the way up. The connector road has been changed since then to a different point, but all that traffic is gonna have to come all the way up to Holcomb. Look at all those homes there. If I got the next one. Page 52 of the staff report has a section about the trigger to complete the road to Redland. The applicant shall measure average daily trip volume on Winston Drive, Cattle Drive, and Shartner Drive at the time of each DDP application that would route trips on these streets. And in bolding, if trips, total existing plus new, will exceed 2,000 per day on any of these streets, the applicant shall ensure a secondary street connection is provided to the south connecting to Redland Road so that drivers have multiple route choices. In summary, by the time daily trips reach 2,000 or more, it will be too late for residents of these neighborhoods. Because again, there's only one half block to enter or exit this existing neighborhood. The developer or city would then be forced to consider alternative routes. But where? There's no feasible outlets already planned. That's only in the future. Why not complete these now? We ask that needed improvements to transportation facilities necessitated by new development be made or funded as part of the development process. Condition development approval on construction of or financial commitments for improvements before this large development moves forward. Again, I want to show you that map now without my arrows. Look at all those homes down below and all throughout that area. They say they're going to block Journey Drive, Shartner, Cattle Drive. That's only a temporary fix, as you heard earlier. They will be open during various phases. That's going to put a lot of traffic through streets where children play on their bikes and where seniors walk. Icon has listened to the residents of Park Place and made some changes to their plans to help alleviate some traffic safety in the Trailview neighborhood. Apparently, some barriers might be placed on key streets where children may play. Will these barriers be enough to alleviate some of the concerns of parents with children, as well as seniors who walk those neighborhoods? Will this be enough to stop cut-throughs in our neighborhood? What if there is another evacuation down in that area? Following me is going to be Linda Smith. Linda's going to present a more realistic traffic count from reliable sources. In my 8 years on the Planning Commission and beyond, I have yet to hear from our traffic consultant, John Ripplinger, who sits over here by Icon every meeting, to disagree with any development project across Oregon City. This is apparently because developers and our own traffic consultant use existing parameters expected with such developments. These are definitely not always the standards that residents of neighborhoods experience. Jackie Hammond-Williams will continue after that. In the original concept plan, there was plans for a community business center in the project area with shops and services that could eliminate too many trips in the project area. Jackie Hammond-Williams will also speak to this part of the plan that appears to have been diminished. Oh, that's that one. We request, I'm not used to using this, we request that this development not be approved until better roads are planned to allow safe travel routes for existing and new residents of the restricted areas off Holcomb Boulevard. Please understand, and I want to make this very clear, Park Place residents are not against development. We just want it done responsibly and without endangering current residents. Thank you for your time and consideration, and again, apologize for misinterpreting earlier. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Hello, Mayor and City Commissioners. Thank you very much for your time. I understand this is a huge process to go through. My name's Linda Smith. I am a resident of Oregon City and more importantly, a resident of the Park Place neighborhood for 46 years now. And I'm very passionate about my neighborhood and want to reiterate what Tom closed with in his argument was that we are not against development. We want development and we understand that development needs to happen. We just want it done in a controlled, helpful way that won't harm our residents and won't disturb the livability that we go through currently. I do have a PowerPoint that I created for tonight, so we'll go through that. So the Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 1608, 16.08.25B, the Traffic Transportation Plan states that a traffic study that is to assess the traffic impacts of the proposed development on the existing transportation system and analyzes the adequacy of the existing system to accommodate the traffic from the proposed development. We find that the study that was done was skewed in favor of the developer. There we go. We find that it ignores the Holcomb Boulevard traffic counts completely, and in the staff response to the appellants on page 14, it calls out traffic counts on 16th Street west of Division of 517 trips per day, and on Front Street near Forsyth Avenue of 414 trips per day, and on Apperson north of Holcomb of 692 trips, which has absolutely nothing to do with Holcomb Boulevard or Winston Drive or anything to do with the areas that we're concerned about. So I'm not sure why the staff responded with that when we're concerned about Holcomb Boulevard and exceeding 2,000 trips per day, and no place in anywhere of the conversation about 2,000 trips per day does it say where that count's going to take place at. It just says once 2,000 trips per day occur. And is that going to be on Winston Drive? Is it going to be in the Trailview neighborhood? Is it going to be on the exit of all of these new constructed houses? Where is that going to happen at? I don't actually see an intersection where that's going to happen. And it doesn't include concerns that we have about the Holcomb-Abernathy-Redland intersection or the intersection of Redland and Highway 213. And it also doesn't take into account the livability and the adjoining local streets and the impact that it has, what I've seen over my 46 years of living there and the impact that we've seen. And, you know, luckily, we've been able to include new flashing crossing lights for pedestrians in our neighborhood, and we've gotten sidewalks up Holcomb Road and street lights and improvements over the time that I've lived there. And I'll note that the housing development that's going in is just beyond our one and only elementary school that we have in our neighborhood. And so all of this traffic from all of these homes will come directly past our elementary school. So anyhow, 2,000 trips per day would be reached. Per staff report, they believe not until the final phases of the project. So I looked up some information online and I found a study done. The U.S. Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration did a study in 2014, and they said that the average U.S. household currently produces 9.5 trips per day by all modes, and about 82% of those are vehicle trips. So the remaining trips are done by all modes of travel, such as transit, bicycle, and walking. Well, in that neighborhood, in Park Place, there's not a whole lot of transit happening. We get a couple of buses a day up there, and now with the little county bus, that we get a little bit more. But so if we go with that 82%, we can just keep that number in mind. So Metro also did a study a little more recently in 2016, and they found that in the four-county area around here that it's actually 9.2 trips on average. And then if you look at the four counties in here in our metro area. If you look at Clackamas County, you find that 67% of our residents actually leave the county to go find work. So that's telling me that we have a lot of mobility with people actually having to go find work. So since our neighborhood doesn't happen to have a lot of transportation, I equate that to meaning that a lot of our residents are driving to where they're working. That's my estimation of what's happening. So if you do a little bit of math, Park Place crossing traffic, at the time and point that I did this, they were saying 440 households. I know now they say 426, so my number might be off a little bit. So 9.2 trips a day is 4,480 by the time they're done adding that. If you take 82% of that, remember I said that would be the number that they would be vehicle trips if we use that math, is 3,319 trips. Well, you can see that we're going to reach 2,000 trips well before we reach the end in phases. It's going to be somewhere around the middle. So if we wait for 2,000 trips per day to then say, ICON, you need to put this extra road in, and then how many years is that going to take to put the road in? We're going to be stuck with all this traffic in our neighborhood for a long time while they're now building this road. We must make it mandatory that they put this north-south, actually both roads, Holly Lane and Swan, in prior to building out any of these phases. In my opinion, we should hold the concept plan as it was originally written and not allow this variation to happen. And so it should be required before the breaking point. So why are we waiting for it to be broken before we fix it? And so I'm going to refer back to a document that the city staff actually prepared. So this is a public testimony from May 9th, and the city staff response to the general development plan, staff analysis and response to the concern that there was lack of street connection to Redland Road and traffic for Holcomb. And the staff said that at some point between proposed phase 1 and 2, the roads will be over capacity. This means that the applicant will likely not be able to demonstrate compliance with transportation mobility standards for phase 2 as proposed and beyond unless action is taken to add capacity at the intersection of Redland and Holcomb. And so the staff is recognizing as far back as May that before phase 2 that there needs to be action taken. And yet now they're saying, oh, well, it's not a problem. So I don't understand the conflict between what city staff is saying when they're telling us in response to our concerns in early meetings that, yeah, it's a problem. And now later on, they're saying, oh, no, now it's not a problem. So I'm not feeling good about how we're being directed. And so I just ask that you take all of this into consideration and realize that, once again, we want development. We understand development needs to happen. We just want it done with some intelligence, and that the Planning Commission somehow, I think that they weren't maybe directed correctly with the ordinance the way it was supposed to be done. And we ask for your guidance in perhaps correcting some, or maybe taking some opportunities with the ordinance at this point. Anyhow, I think I'm done. So I appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have a lot of high-tech testimony tonight. Thank you.
Well, I'm a bit of a Luddite, so my presentation has quirks in it. And poor Jacob, I think I sent it 3 times today. Jackie Hammond-Williams, I'm a resident of the Park Place area for 32 years. I've actually lived in Park Place longer than my hometown in England. I am not adverse to development. I'm used to density. That's the way England runs. We pack them in. However, I have great reserves about this GDP. Some background. I think I can skip through some of these slides. That arrow is pointing to my name. Yes, I was part of the Project Advisory Committee back in 2006. A lot of us have worked for many years on this, either at, the concept plan part or more recently with the Planning Commission meetings. This was a brilliant plan. We had some excellent consultants brought in. Sarah Architects, Tim Smith, he's a star of sustainable development. We just rallied around him. He was our leader for this development. Kittleson and Associates, great people, transportation design people. There were some heavy hitters on this committee. 4 city staff, including Pete Waters, who's still here tonight, were regularly at the meetings. I never missed one, and neither did a lot of my comrades in Park Place. The Park Place concept plan emphasizes good urban design, multimodal connectivity, opportunities for placemaking and cultivating community diversity, and above all, a way to provide for future growth in a sustainable manner. I'd like you to remember the words connectivity, placemaking, and provide for future growth in a sustainable manner. This was a cutting-edge design concept plan. It was actually called the North and South Villages. We're only here tonight talking about the North Village. It was called a village for a reason. And the reason was we talked a lot about placemaking when we were designing this concept plan. And it was a brilliant idea because it was creating a mini village. I mean, it wasn't going to provide all the amenities that a village provides, but it was there to create this new kind of development, this new part of our neighborhood that would hold people in place. There would be live-work units, there would be neighborhood commercial, there would be civic, there would be parks. We were very excited. We were really excited about this. The key components of the Park Place plan include a whole bunch of stuff which you've already seen tonight and many people have spoken about. And of course, the number one key component are the 2 primary north-south connections between Holcombe and Redland, the Holly Lane and Swan Avenue extension. In the page 5 executive summary of the Park Place concept plan, transportation streets sized to handle future growth. A network of local collector and arterial streets provide the area with sufficient capacity and connectivity, that word again, to meet anticipated travel demands well into the future. And now here we are. We are well into the future. And since we did this plan, many, many, many developments have been built in our neighborhood, including one right now that's going in, I think it's 122 homes, and that's the Sears development. None of us have disapproved of that. We haven't appealed against any of these developments, right? So obviously this one has triggered some deep feelings within our community. The network of streets is designed to easily disperse vehicular traffic, easily disperse, right? Remember that. Ready to accommodate transit and pedestrian and blah, blah. The Park Place concept plan incorporates a well-connected transportation system with 2 primary north-south travel routes. There we go again. The Swan Avenue extension will include bridges. We're not going to talk about Abernathy Creek because I think that involves the other part of the development, which we're not talking about. But there is a bridge in the concept plan across Livesey Creek Canyon, creating much needed connections between adjacent neighborhoods and, underlined here, providing adequate capacity and system redundancy critically needed during times of emergency. 2 primary north-south connections between Holcombe and Redland. What are the importance of them? To go over it again, provides connectivity of the development to the community, provides access for emergency services and evacuations, alleviates traffic burden on Holcombe, and provides viability for the commercial zone. So how can you possibly have a commercial zone at the bottom of a pit of development with no access to the south. I mean, who is going to really rent or take out a business in a development which has no connectivity to the rest of the neighborhood, let alone the rest of the city? So how does this GDP differ? There's no north-south connections at all, constrained access for emergency vehicles and evacuation. I believe there is a locked gate on Livesey. I mean, how great is that? All traffic funnels onto Holcomb through existing neighborhood and one new small street. No through traffic for viability of the commercial zone, already covered that. So here is the picture that we're all familiar with, and I think you'll see 4 arrows. This was the original concept, to have 4 accesses into this neighborhood. At the top, Swan and Holly, and at the bottom, Swan and Holly at Redland. The next one shows it much clearer. On the left-hand side, look at that lovely connectivity, the blue roads, the red roads, lots of circulation, just as it says in the Park Place concept plan. But then look on the right, here is the GDP, and it's a pocket of massive development with one road out on the east side, I guess, you know, and then all traffic is going to filter through the existing Trailsview development. I mean, how practical is that, really? There's nothing to the south whatsoever. It just dead ends at Livesey with a lock gate. All those people in that pocket of development. The idea was to have the connectivity between Holcomb and Redland, because people in this neighborhood, not just in this development, could then go down off Holcomb, down through Holly, and then up Holly, the existing Holly that's already built, up to the top of the hill. That would completely circumnavigate us having to go down onto Redland, onto 213, and would alleviate all that traffic right there. Oregon Live and the Oregonian, on January 16th, 2008, Steve Mays wrote an article about Park Place concepts questioned. And there's a quote from Pete Walter here. Oregon city planner who's working on the Park Place concept plan design said, "Everyone knows the existing transportation system is inadequate." Now, this is 2008. Walter said, if you never put in a concept plan, you never solve the problem. So here we have a concept plan, but we haven't solved the problem. I won't go on because I'm kind of belaboring the point, but you know, you can read this. I've given you all a packet that I printed out. Commercial development is very much needed in this village, but again, how can it be viable with no connectivity? What I do want to point out is the new PGE Public Safety Power Shutoff Map. This came into fruition this year and was actually implemented this year when we had some very dry and dangerous fire weather. The pink on, oh goodness, okay. The pink on the right is where PGE has identified critical fire danger. Now, and see what is directly to the west? It's this new development. And what is the only access to this neighborhood and for this development? One road, Holcomb Road. Now, back in 2020, it took us, you know, all of us hours to get out, if we even bothered. What's going to happen to these people in this pocket? How can they possibly get out? How can anyone further up Holcomb get out? How can anyone existing in the neighborhood, residences right now, get out? This is the elephant in the room. It's called climate change. We're going to have landslides. We're going to have much heavier rainfall. We're going to have fires. Do you want that on your conscience? Or will the city get sued for approving this without proper access? Tom Guile wanted me to talk about neighborhood nodes and everything, and I'm running out of time. I think I've already said quite a lot of that. We need a bigger park. That was in the concept plan. We need more commercial. That was in the concept plan. We want live-work areas. I am really running out of time here. I'm just going to come to the end. There is a shadow plat map there. You can see that's supposedly going to be the new part of the park eventually when it's built. But our own Parks Department director said that there is not the proper area there for for ball fields. So we're not going to get the amenities that we thought we were going to get. In conclusion, Park Place concept plan provides 2 north-south connector roads badly needed to improve inadequate transportation system. This Park Place concept plan has been diluted from a functional place-making village.
Jackie, you're out of time.
Cookie cutter development.
You're way out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi there, Richard Guerrero, Oregon City. Been in the Park Place neighborhood for almost 17 years now. I can't believe that. And I'm hoping in the next 10 minutes that all my years as Toastmasters will finally pay off. So I'm going to talk a little bit about neighborhood livability impacts. And there's a bunch of numbers here and everything, and I can, jot out 17.65.010. Sure you all have this. Purpose and intent. It is the intent of this chapter to foster growth while mitigating the impacts of such growth on the surrounding properties. And if we continue on talking about neighborhood livability impacts, several statements have been made in the applicant's information referencing negative livability impacts of the development. So I want to talk about 3 of them. The first one is throughout the process, the developer, or I have 3 points I should just say. Throughout the process, the developer has made reassurances that they would do right by the Park Place concept plan. Unfortunately, it does seem like every chance that comes up, they're asking for a variance and another variance. It kind of doesn't bode well for a feeling of the neighborhood livability when the very plans that my friends, my wife, and neighbors have worked so earnestly for are swept aside for what seems to be profit and the ease of big corporation. Number 2, the developer has a history of, shall we just say, not doing the right thing. In the meeting on 8/22 of this year, we heard at least 2 neighbors testify about Icon leaving a lot of trash behind in a previous project here in Park Place. They were long gone and had to be called back to clean up the mess by the city. At the same meeting, we heard that the developer was facing huge fines for similar behavior at 4 sites in Canby this summer. This, again, does not bode well for the feeling of neighborhood livability. And number 3, my final crushing concern is this deceit the developer cloaks in their projects. And you know what, deceit's kind of a strong word. I'm really going to say sleight of hand. As a prime example, what's taking place right now, the developer has come, I want to point out the developer came to the Park Place Neighborhood Association meeting on April 19th of 2021. And they presented a plan for Sears Farm. They answered all of our questions and promised to let us know if any pertinent changes, should there be any, were going to happen. Now, construction has started on the Sears project, and with it, a new sign has been installed. And on the sign is the announcement that it's the site for the 2024 Street of Dreams. Not one single mention was made about this at any time in that meeting with our neighborhood or at any time since that this was going to happen. Yet the impact of what an event like this will have on our neighborhood is unimaginable. We have horrible traffic already, and then to have the Street of Dreams and this project going on, there's going to be a point where somebody's going to go, what happened here? So that's all I have to say, my points. I want to thank the 4 of you. You have a lot on your plate. There's been a lot thrown out at you this evening, and I'm glad I'm over here, not on that side. So thank you for your time and service. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much, Richard. I appreciate the Toastmasters reference. All right, we are going to take a short break because I'm going to allow that because I need to take a break. So we will come back at, let's take 5 minutes. I know that my hearing is really good. I can hear that.
Water.
Yep, so hang on. We'll tell you when to start, so get some water.
He never spoke.
I should ask everybody whose butt's falling. Because I tell you, mine's already fallen asleep. Don't start laughing. How come icons never here? I never see them.
We're ready.
All right. I'm going to call the meeting back to order, and next on the lineup is we will have a presentation from the applicants.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Garrett Stevenson. My address is 1211 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1900, Portland, Oregon 97204. With me tonight is Chris Goodell, who is our land use planner on the project. And what I want to do, obviously it's challenging to respond comprehensively to everything we've heard over the last 2 hours and 20 minutes. But I think what we want to do is give the commission an overview of our best foot forward on this project, explain why we think it deserves to be approved, and I will save my rebuttal to specific arguments during my rebuttal time. So,
Garrett, how do you spell Mr. Goodell? How do you spell your last name?
Oh, I was going to provide my name and spell it for you when I talk, but that's fine. My first name is Chris, last name is Goodell, Goodell. And my address is 12965 Southwest Herman Road, Suite 100, Tualatin, Oregon 97062.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. And please forgive me about my voice. I've been recovering from one thing or another over the last month. I want to direct, just as a preliminary matter, I want to direct your attention to a letter that we submitted yesterday in response to the appeals. That letter essentially does three things. It raises certain procedural arguments, some legal arguments, and it also provides a substantive response to the issues that we could see in the appeal documents. And I apologize for not being able to get that to the commission sooner. However, we only had about 10 working days, and when you actually account for some other things going on, only about 7 working days to prepare a response to the number of appeals that we received, one of which we didn't see until tonight. So I'm not going to go over what's already written, given the limited time that I have. What I would like to do is talk more about the project, as I said. You have in front of you a staff report that I believe was authored and submitted on the 4th. And I think on the substantive level, that staff report does a very good job of responding to the issues that have been raised. I want to thank staff for putting that much time into it. Certainly, they were very quick and comprehensive in responding to all those appeals. And we took a look at that staff report and saw there were 2 new conditions that are proposed. One is for landscape screening along the south and east edge of phase 1, and a requirement that development along the north side of Livesay Road will be no less than 2 stories tall. I want to just be clear that we have looked at those additional conditions and we have no objection to them should the commission wish to impose them. I think between the staff report, the application, the staff report in the record, the planning commission's final findings and decision, what the commission has before is a very thorough record explaining why the application satisfies the approval criteria, and with the conditions of approval will ensure that this is the case. I want to spend the rest of my time explaining why the Planning Commission ought to approve this project. The City Commission.
It's a commission.
So this is the sixth hearing conducted about the Park Place Crossing GDP. And one of the things I heard a lot of tonight is concern by the public that when we had these hearings, we came back with alterations to the application. And I want to put a completely different perspective on that, which is to say that we listen. And I think Tom Guile admitted as much. Every time we heard concerns voiced by the neighbors or voiced in the discussions of the Planning Commission, we did our level best to address those concerns with changes in our applications. This is simply not a plan that has been shoved down the throats of the city or its residents. This is a plan that's come a long way from what it originally looked like, and there's a very good reason for that. The applicant does not know, nobody knows, what the reception of a plan like this is going to be at the first hearing. And so I just want to go on the record regarding, regardless of who voted for us and who voted against us, I want to go on the record to thank the Planning Commission and the staff for allowing us the time to have that deliberative process. I don't think that there's anybody in this room, myself included, who's going to argue that they have not been heard. And I appreciate Mr. Giles' admission that we have done things to bring the plan into a place that hopefully will suit the neighbors and their concerns better. I wanted to quickly just go through some of the fundamental changes that we made in response to the testimony that we heard during this process. The first one was a redesign of the transportation system to increase connectivity and keep cut-through traffic out of the Trailview neighborhood. Mr. Guile talked a little bit about that, but this is a really important thing. The way that the plan is designed is to ensure that there is no cut-through traffic on the roads that were raised as concerns in the Trailview neighborhood through at least the first two phases. And that traffic would not be allowed in unless we could demonstrate with further phases that we're not generating more than 2,000 trips on those roads. Incidentally, we adopted Mr. Giles' preferred alignment of Holly Lane when we looked at two, one that would go straight up and one that would have a curve in it. The second, I think, real important thing here is a reduction in density from 476 units to 426 units. I think that it's fair to say that density is always a controversial piece of a large plan. It was here. We solicited feedback of the Planning Commission. We looked at what the code requires, and we're now proposing a density that is in the range of what's allowed in the base zones, but is high enough to meet the goals of the concept plan. And that is, we're providing roughly half the number of units in the North Village based on the fact that we are proposing a plan for about half the area. The third thing was an increase in the size of lots directly abutting the Trailview neighborhood. This was something that a number of those folks were concerned about, so we actually did change the lotting pattern, provide larger lots and a reduction of density, to provide a better transition between that neighborhood and the rest of the project. The parkland was reconfigured during this process, and we changed the location of that to do two things. Number one, we wanted to facilitate future addition to that parkland, because remember, we don't own all of the North Village. We own only a portion of it. And if you look at the concept plan map and compare it with our maps, you'll see that the parkland called for in the concept plan map sits right where our property line is. Half of it's in, half of it's out. And so it's important for me to explain to the City Commission that we do not have control and we can't build on property we don't own. And one of the concerns is, well, you've only got a 4.3 acre park when the concept plan calls for 8, and that's true. It does call for 8. It doesn't call for all 8 acres on the property we control. And as Ms. Richter mentioned in her staff report, the city is constrained by rough proportionality insofar as it can only require the amount of parkland dedication that is justified by the amount that we're going to build. And we worked really hard with staff over the last year to come up with what we believe was a fair proportionality of that parkland. So, if we own the entirety of the property that the parkland was planned for, maybe this would look different, but the fact is we don't. And we provided, I think, more than what is roughly proportional to the impact of our units. The fifth thing I wanted to point out is a modification of the mixed commercial areas along Livesay Road to better reflect a Main Street corridor. And I don't want him to blush, but that was something that Jim Nacita raised that we took a look at and thought made sense. So, we really did propose these revisions to the plan to do two things. Number one, we wanted to produce a plan that would be approved by the Planning Commission, but we also wanted to get feedback from the neighbors, from the people that are residents in the area, and do right by them and change the plan where we could to better reflect what their needs and concerns were. Now, we understand that there is vigorous debate about development in this area. That debate was present when we annexed the property back in 2018. But the city annexed this land, it zoned it for residential uses, and it planned it in a manner that is very similar to the general development plan you have in front of you today. The application and the staff reports and the entire record before the Planning Commission, as well as the Planning Commission's findings, firmly established that the application satisfies all the applicable criteria and is consistent with the Park Place concept plan. And for those reasons, we would urge the City Commission to deny the appeals and uphold the Planning Commission decision. With that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Chris, who can talk a little bit about the specific plans and the maps. But if you have questions, please let me know and we'll try to answer those for you.
Thank you. This is Chris Goodell with AKS. The city attorney provided a very thorough background of the property that is subject to the application and described exactly how it came to be, where it's at in the process now. And then Garrett just stole most of my thunder as far as what I'm going to say. So I just have some graphic presentations that I guess reflect more or less what you just heard from Garrett. Is it not working?
No, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, I don't want to cause the feedback.
Yeah, you're not having any feedback. It's perfect.
Okay, cool. All right, great. Thank you very much. So this here, the slide here is showing the application's original design. You can see where the units are, the open space, and then the park area and the circulation patterns. This is the updated application design. It looks similar, but what it has is a reconfigured park area and some reconfigured roadways, notably in the north end of the site and then in the south end of the site. So what we heard going in after several planning commission meetings, these were the issues that we understood. We took from discussions, hours of meetings just like this, that the desire was for lower density, bigger lots, greater housing diversity, additional alleys, and updates to the park and neighborhood commercial area. So in terms of lower density, what the applicant did is reduce the number of overall homes from 476 to 426, which has been mentioned here earlier. But that's a significant decrease in the amount of homes. So what that equates to is on a gross acreage basis, this is 4.65 dwelling units per acre, and on the net, it's closer to 9 units per acre. And also a GDP adjustment for density, which previously was included in the application, was removed. So a number of things were done to address project density. Next is bigger lots. The lots on the perimeter adjacent to the Trailview neighborhood in the R10 area of the project, which is in the northwestern portion, I would say. And then on the eastern portion, all these areas are outlined in green or blue, were increased in lot size to fall generally between 8,000 and 10,000 square feet, except for the area there that's zoned R10, which is in the northwest portion of the site. All of those lots were increased to 10,000 square feet. These were things that we heard countless times at the hearing. So these were things we attacked and wanted to make sure that we took care of. Another thing was alleys. We had alleys in the project design since the very conception, and we heard that more alleys were desired. So we took the plan and looked at it. In every place that we could conceivably put an alley that didn't have a topographic constraint or wasn't up against another person's property, somewhere that didn't make sense at all, we have alleys. So especially we figured the most important spot was down Holly Lane. That's the place that people wanted to have the most walkable, no driveways and all that kind of stuff. So that's really where the focus is. And then some other adjustments that were made based on comments received was we shifted Holly Lane away from adjacent properties to the west in the northern section, which is shown outlined in green there. The applicants continue to work with the neighbors, the affected neighbors to the west there to talk about screening. The park geometry was updated. There was the concept plan had a significant amount of street frontage for the park. So the initial design didn't quite have that. So this design has an extensive amount of street frontage, so people are going to be able to walk down the park, look at the park, as it won't be homes back into the park. The idea was to have a visible park. An additional connection was made to Livesey Road. City staff wanted a connection. The concept plan shows a number of road connections in that area, so an additional connection was provided in that area, and that's shown with the yellow arrows there. And it was Mr. Nacita's comments, I think, in one of the initial Planning Commission hearings that inspired the additional neighborhood commercial to cover the bulk of Livesey road frontage where it wasn't ridiculously steep where it is to the east. So I think, let's see. And then finally, working with staff to address connections off-site, meaning Holly Lane. So this map really more or less shows, based on conversations with county staff, city staff, where the Holly Lane connection to the south outside of the application properties would go. And then condition of approval number 10 was added in, which requires the plan to complete the Holly Lane Redland Road connection with DDP for phases 4 through 6. So, Garrett, that's all I had to say. I just wanted to put a graphic with each one of those ideas.
So with the 3 minutes I have remaining, I wanted to offer kind of a meta perspective on some of the issues that the City Commission has heard tonight. And, quite frankly, I think a lot of those issues are intuitive and understandable, and we certainly sympathize with them. I think what a lot of it comes down to is that this is a 480-acre concept plan area, of which we are about 92 acres, is that right? And so, connectivity, parks, commercial areas, everybody wants all of that right now. And what our plan does is facilitates that in the future, but we don't own all 480 acres. We don't own the entirety of the North Village. And it is simply infeasible, impractical, and I don't think that the city could justify a requirement that we build out the entire Park Place master plan in terms of all the streets, all the parks, all of the commercial area during this first initial part of the project. One of the comments I heard was, well, we have all the commercial area down at the bottom, but no connectivity. Well, the reason why the commercial area is at the bottom is because that's what the concept plan calls for. We provide the connectivity that we have the ability to provide during these phases, and that's why you have a phased plan. There's 6 phases to this, and each one of these phases has to go through a separate detailed development plan process, and in each of those cases, the detailed development plan will require an updated traffic study and substantially updated analysis for grading, erosion control, all of the things that we've heard concerns about today. And we think that that's the appropriate time for those things. But the point is that this is not you're not going to see all 426 units built in the single phase. It's going to lead to a complete lockup of traffic because we don't have enough streets. You have the first phase, which is only, I believe, 49 units, I think, something like that. And that's the only phase that we move forward on immediately. The second phase will still be prohibited from from adding traffic to the surrounding local streets until we have some of these additional facilities in place. And that's what the general development plan process does. It allows us to make a large 30,000 foot level plan that shows how these phases will work as we move through them. But what it can't do is it can't plan for the entire 480 acres of Park Place. And the reason why it can't is because it's a quasi-judicial application that we have submitted because we control only a portion of it. And I think what you have before you is a demonstration that the area that we control and that we have some say in how it grows is consistent with the Park Place master plan and will facilitate the rest of the build out of Park Place consistent with that plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you calling Brenda?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to call up, we'll have Brenda on the phone, and I'd like to call up Carla Laws.
And Mayor, per the rules of procedure for the commission, a majority of the commissioners would need to approve going past 10 o'clock.
Yes.
We're close.
We're close to what, 10 o'clock?
No, we have 4 people, and they're 3 minutes apiece.
Oh,
Yeah, we
Do
got
you
a
want
lot
to do
more
that right
after
now?
that.
Are you recommending we do that right now?
I'm putting it out there because I think, we're going to go past 10 o'clock with the next.
So the answer is yes, you're recommending that right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Agreed. 4 people, 3 minutes apart, apiece? Yes, let's do it.
Okay, we're fine. Thank you, Tony.
Bear with me for just a moment.
That's fine. Carla can come on up.
Hi, this is Jacob Wiley with the Oregon City. Are you ready for your 3-minute testimony? All right. I'll start the clock right now. Please say your name and your city of residence for the record. I will give you a warning at 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Brenda Marks of Park Place neighborhood in Oregon City, and I've been listening to the last couple hours of testimony. So I want to let you know that I sent a written testimony, and I'm just going to hit a few highlights as I speak to you right now. I just want to reiterate that Holcomb Road is currently insufficient to move traffic, particularly in an emergency due to growth in the county rural areas. Vehicles are coming from outlying areas, and they're not under the purview of the city, but they have detrimental impact on the traffic flow in our neighborhood. And just as a concrete example, during the 2020 fire evacuation, it took me 45 minutes to travel 1 mile from my house to the intersection at 205 and 213. I just want to concur with my neighborhood leadership that the current proposed development is a significant deviation from the approved Park Place concept plan. And finally, I just want to thank you for carefully considering this project, how it impacts our neighborhood, and how the processes have been conducted. Please hear the plea of the majority of those who have testified. The current proposed development is a serious concern to our safety and the livability of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda, for being on the line.
Yes.
All right. So you're going to go it back to 0. All right, go ahead.
I'm Carla Laws. I'm here not only as a resident, but as I came before as a neighborhood chair, so I would get 5 minutes technically. I'm not sure if I'll even need that much, but
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, anyways, I'm here. We've heard a lot of residents tonight talk about livability and their homes and how sacred they are. and I really appreciate everyone's comments. I've seen this in my own neighborhood, and I have a quote to read. "Only when the last tree has died and the last river has been poisoned and the last fish has been caught, we will realize we cannot eat money," a Cree Indian proverb. And what I want to say is, we've had land use approved in my neighborhood, and not to this degree. And after they're approved, the developer gets to do things, and it's okay with the city. And then it's between the city and the developer, and it doesn't involve the citizens anymore. And that's really upsetting to me. The reason I'm here particularly is when I testified before to the Planning Commission, and I wanted to share with you all, is about concerns for my neighborhood, the traffic in other neighborhoods coming down Anchor Way. Even if there's a second road coming down additional to Holcomb, it's going to bottleneck Redland, it's going to bottleneck Anchor Way, and it's going to bottleneck to I-205. And I'm concerned about the safety, not only just for residents, but our children that go to Holcomb Elementary School, my neighborhood school. I'm concerned about residents and livability and feeling like they can connect with their city, and that their city staff is advocating for them. I want that relationship between the city and the residents. Anyways, I wanted to emphasize that, and I really appreciate you all and your time and allowing us to go over and allowing me to speak, and thank you very much.
Ms. Richter, may I ask a question, please? Since this was all verbal, was the information that was submitted in this testimony, was that in the record?
I don't think so, but we will confirm and get back with you, but I don't think so. I don't think the Anchor Way testimony was in the record, but I will have to check.
Or the
Ms. Laws did testify.
Yes, or the Holcomb School? I was looking for it in the packet.
I'm not sure if Ms. Laws said it, but I think that concerns over Holcomb Elementary School children was raised.
Okay. All right, I would like to call Steve and Linda Van Haverbeek. Since you both live in Park Place, I thought it was only fitting that you close out this portion of the public testimony since you are in that particular area. So thank you very much. And you can flip a coin to see who goes first.
Hi, I'm Linda Van Haverbeek, and I live in Oregon City. I live in Park Place, and we're very concerned. And our concern with Park Place has extended my husband and I to be on the steering committee for a number of years, the whole time that we've lived there. We've lived there 17 years. And I hope that you realize that the number of households that are proposed will grow the Park Place neighborhood by 30%. And this is on Holcomb Boulevard, which, while looks pretty some days, is essentially a county road. There's no left turn lane, there's no stop signs, there's no lights, and at our May meeting, we had residents asking for a stoplight on Holcomb Road. We'll never get it. This was farmland at one time. They're short roads. There's very few, even on the north side, that connect to another road. Good luck ever making a left turn again, either off of Holcomb or onto Holcomb, if this comes along. When the neighborhood that I live in came about, somewhat Holcomb Road was flattened, but not enough. You can't see the cars as they come down the hill. We've, in the last year and a half, had the speed limit lowered from 40 to 35, but that doesn't mean everybody goes 35. I want you to know that the Sears property is right at this moment being cleared for development. Summer of 2024 is the Street of Dreams. Do you know what traffic is like at the Street of Dreams? And we're having construction traffic at the same time. Good luck to anybody. You know, we're going to have a future high school in our neighborhood on some of the Sears property. You know, we have a lot of kids more. We're going to have a lot.
We're not allowing it.
At this point, there is no evacuation plan for the city or the county for earthquake, for fire, for slide. And the probabilities are very high on all of these, especially if very dangerously with no connection to Redland Road. And if we're cut off, our little Holcomb Market with our tiny bit of gas and a little bit of food will not keep us very long. Thank you.
Stephen.
I'm Steve Van Haverbeek, a resident of Oregon City. I'm chair of the Park Place neighborhood. As all of the testimony is shown tonight, everybody has been trying their best to get their views heard. We want sane, equitable development in our neighborhood. I know that ICON has tried its best to meet all our requirements, and they've done a very good job of listening and trying to make the changes required. The one thing that they have not changed is the north-south connection until way late in the process. So just to put into perspective, there's 107 homes that are off of Winston, and don't know why that was ever allowed to happen on a dead-end street, basically. But it was also obviously planned to have future expansion as they have the zebras at the end of each dead end. But 107 homes already, and that's at least 1,000 trips a day. So by the beginning of phase 4, we're going to hit that 2,000 trips. So I would propose that instead of waiting until we've broken it completely, that we build the Swan or Holly Lane connection. I don't think Swan was going to have any impact on this since it's outside of the area. But if we can get the Holly Lane connection prior to starting phase 3, I would be much happier. So thank you for your time. Thank you for all your effort. And we look forward to your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
And before we move on, there was a question about Tom Guile. There might have been a mix-up with his comment card. He also wanted to speak as an individual. I just wanted to confirm with Pete that he has standing as an individual as well. Oh, if we have one more individual comment.
I'm sorry, you're nodding your heads and I don't know what you said.
Yes, Mr. Guile should have standing. He commented during the Planning Commission hearings.
As the Park Place person or as an individual?
As an individual.
Okay, I didn't have him on any list other than as the Park Place neighborhood person.
Yeah, it was just a mix-up with the card.
It was a mix-up of the cards?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't get any cards, so that they can't be mixed up if I didn't receive any, so that's fine. Come on up.
What's the time limit?
3 minutes. If I'd received a card, I would have read the card, but I did not.
I spoke to them out front.
Did not receive anything.
Yeah, I spoke to them out front earlier because I was speaking on behalf of the neighborhood before, and I asked to speak as an individual. So
I asked to go last night for my 3 minutes as an individual resident because I wanted to sum up a cause that has taken up 19 years, nearly a quarter of my life. Again, as I said earlier, I kind of was taken back earlier when I came up to speak and ask my question about the time of staff. Sometimes I feel like I was going against two different sets of attorneys, ICON and our own city attorney. Sometimes during the proceedings of planning seemed to favor some of what ICON was doing.
I hate to interrupt.
Could you turn your microphone on?
I hate to interrupt you, Tom.
I'm sorry?
Could you turn your mic on?
sorry, do I need to start all over?
No.
Is my voice loud enough to be heard?
No.
You get my point. I felt like I was going against two sets of attorneys tonight. I've attended every concept planning meeting back in 2004 through 2008. I've attended every annexation hearing in 2008, 2010, and 2012. I've attended every planning commission meeting, often sometimes more often than some of the planning commissioners, members themselves. In fact, I've attended more meetings over the years than most of the current city staff, and especially ICON. So this evening, you've heard from 9 different appellants, along with several individuals with standings. The subjects have ranged from actual ordinance itself to landslides potential to nature and wildlife disturbance. You've heard more actual traffic counts. You've heard about the diminished planned business center that was promised in the Park Place concept plan. Many of us, as I was talking during the break, still do not understand the confusing situation that was brought up by our own city attorney about ordinances. To me, ordinance is a law, and I don't understand how you can get around it. You've heard a lot from numerous residents and neighbors tonight, but you also get to hear from ICON's kind of highly paid and land use educated attorneys against some of us who are just normal residents. Others who ICON will argue tooth and nail for their interests, much to the detriment of those of us who actually live in the area and those who would be most severely impacted by their huge development. We can't blame ICON. They're going to walk away with huge profits off this development. Make no mistake about it, this is not meant to be a benefit for our community. No matter how they tout it, no matter how they twist it, this is about huge profits. ICON will walk away with bulging pockets of cash. On behalf of those here and those listening at home, I sincerely request that you pay attention to those of us who for years into the future will be impacted by this huge debacle that does not meet the standards of the original Park Place concept plan. Thank you for listening to me all these years, reading all my 22 articles in the Oregon City News. I checked with Raymond, I had 22 in there. And more specifically for listening to me and all my neighbors tonight. I thank you, and I'm glad this is finally done. One way or another, I've dealt with it too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next.
Be clear that that's the end of the public testimony,
Yes.
and it's time for applicant has the opportunity for final rebuttal.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Once again, Garrett Stevenson for the applicant. Also with me tonight is Todd Mobley with Lancaster Mobley, and he is our transportation engineer responsible for the transportation impact study that is in the record. I wanted to bring Todd up here to talk a little bit about some of the concerns about traffic that we heard, but also to help the City Commission understand what the approach is to traffic management. But before I do that, I just want to quickly go through, my apologies, there's just simply no way in 20 minutes that I can respond to all the testimony I heard tonight. So I'm going to do my best, based on what I heard, to respond to what I think are the main thrusts of the arguments that we've heard. The first one is about connectivity. And I mentioned this a little bit during our initial presentation. But again, I really think that we need to emphasize this. This is a step in the full realization of the entire Park Place area. I think what it comes down to in terms of connectivity and the concerns there is that we only have at this point an emergency access to Livesay. Well, there's a reason for that. We don't control that road. I believe it's still in the county, and that's what staff advised us to do. When the rest of the North Village builds out, presumably that area will be annexed and the full connectivity can be built. But again, we're not pushing all 426 units onto a limited connectivity scenario. We're going deliberately, and we're going to be making traffic improvements as we go. And I believe condition 10 requires a timeline and a plan to complete Holly Lane all the way to Redland Road prior to phases 4 through 6. So this is not something we've ignored. This is something that we've looked at very carefully. We show in the application 2 concepts to connect down to Redland Road that are incidentally very similar to what are called for in the concept plan, but we cannot build those with this application because we don't own all the land, it's not annexed, and it's not part of the property that is subject to the application. What the application does, again, is it facilitates those connections in the future. On the question of density and just the impact of development, again, we think we've hit the best sweet spot we could based on what we heard from the neighbors and from the Planning Commission during the Planning Commission hearing. Concerns about landslide hazards and so forth. We have a preliminary geotechnical report that explains how all of this looks from a slope stability standpoint, but we are going to be updating that report as well as providing grading and erosion control plans for each subsequent phase. I mean, one of the things I heard a lot of tonight is why don't we have this and why don't we have that and why don't we have that? Well, the reason is that it is not practical through the general development plan process to provide the level of detail that some of the opponents want to see. That's why this is a 2-step process. The first step is the general development plan process, which in large part is a phasing plan and also shows where certain land uses are going to be, where certain land uses aren't going to be, and where the streets are going to be located. As we go through this, we'll have general development plans that will have to be refined. That's very well reflected in the conditions of approval. So I'll stop there because I want to make sure Todd has the opportunity to talk a little bit about how we're managing traffic, particularly in phases 1 and 2, which caused a lot of concern. So Todd.
Hi, good evening. I'm Todd Mobley with Lancaster Mobley. I just wanted to add a bit of detail here to the points that Garrett has made and talk some about traffic management. We heard a lot of testimony about transportation and trip rates and some of the details. I did want to quickly point out that we did analyze Holcomb Boulevard and Winston Drive and Highway 213 and Redland Road and all the intersections therein. We heard some about different trip rates from different jurisdictions locally. We used national data in our study that actually were higher than those trip rates. Ours was about 9.6. We did measure traffic on Winston Drive coming out of the Trailsview neighborhood, and for what it's worth, that trip rate comes out to about 8.2 trips per unit for what's in Trailsview. So we have tons of data. It's all documented in the record already. Just wanted to point out that we've done some pretty exhaustive analysis there. With regard to traffic impacts from the development as it builds out through the first few phases, there's a memo in the record that kind of steps through each phase and how we propose to control that traffic, where the trips will go, when a connection's made to Trailsview, and we illustrate a way that we can meet all those thresholds as the site builds out. So we don't exceed 2,000 ADT on new local streets. We don't exceed 2,000 ADT on any of the local streets within the Trailsview neighborhood. And so we do kind of set a path on a way that's achievable. And each of the detailed development plans that will be required for each of the subsequent phases will have to update a traffic study. So that traffic study will ensure that it doesn't break before we fix it. We heard a lot of testimony about a threshold of 2,000 trips, and once we get to 2,000, well, it's too late. Well, by requiring that analysis and new updated traffic counts with each detailed development plan, we can monitor that as we go, and we can ensure that it doesn't break before we fix it, and that we can make sure adequate connectivity is in place before anything would reach those trip levels. So I think that's just kind of a quick overview. There's lots of evidence in the record that support that with lots of detail. Happy to answer questions, or I'll turn it back over to Garrett here for the rest of our time.
Yeah, so Mayor and Commissioners, we have about 13 minutes left. I didn't plan on taking all of it Do you have questions for us that you would like us to answer based on what you've heard tonight, especially since we've got Todd up here? If you have technical questions or specific questions about the application, the process, this is our last opportunity to respond to those. So if you have them, we'd be happy to field them.
Mr. Wiley, could you stop the time for a moment while I ask the city attorney a question? I think that was not what we had in mind, that we were going to use time on this to ask questions.
You certainly can.
We can, but
You don't have to, it's really what do you need to make a decision. If you're comfortable with the information, or if you're not comfortable but need to review a lot more and don't have questions now, that's perfectly acceptable. If you do have questions, you can ask. It's entirely at the commission's.
I guess I'm only speaking for myself. I'm sure I do have lots of questions, but I'm not sure I feel comfortable asking the questions at this point in time. And I need some clarification about if we close the public testimony portion, what is our opportunity? I mean, we're going to direct all of our questions to staff, of course, and I think that that's the most appropriate way to proceed, but I'm talking a little bit out loud, so.
Sure. And Mayor McGriff, I think if the public testimony portion closes tonight, we can interact with staff, and you can interact with staff, ask questions, we can give you the information in the record. To the extent you open it up after that to hear from any particular person, you likely have to open it up to hear from anybody.
Yeah, I want to do that.
So, if...
Gentlemen, what's your pleasure? We didn't ask any of the appellants any questions. Do you want to ask them questions, or what would you like to do? We're going to step through this very carefully.
I do not wish to ask any questions tonight. The reason I don't wish to ask, despite the gentleman's invitation, is this notice, which I would imagine would advocate for his position, this notice being from the firm of, is it Schwabe Williamson? Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt. I've not had the opportunity to read it. It's a belated submittal.
Yes.
I think we first saw it at 10 o'clock today?
It came in tonight.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't feel, I think the purpose of tonight was to gather as much information as those present wish to present. There's a lot to digest, there's a lot to mull over. I can tell you that I've read everything that was given to me, and I still need to reread the Park Place concept plan, and I need to read this submittal which came in today. So I'm not prepared to ask any additional questions. If there's an offering of information by the gentleman, he's certainly free to do that in his remaining time, but I don't want to engage in questions. We didn't question others.
Adam, what's your...
In the spirit of fairness, I would prefer not to, and to communicate with staff with further questions.
Mr. Smith?
I agree.
Okay. Well, I actually have one very general question, and I was looking into the audience, and I don't see anybody here from Icon Management. I see a lot of people that are hired by Icon, but not any of the principals or anything. Have they been at any of the hearings at all? Just as
yes,
a general
Mayor.
question.
In fact, we do have our Icon project manager, Harlan Barrow, sitting behind me.
Thank you. Just wanted to know.
And I believe the other principals are watching the proceedings tonight.
Okay.
So that's fine. If you don't have questions, less for me to do, but I wanted to offer that since I did have extra time, and I don't think anybody else left extra time for questions. I guess in my closing remarks are, certainly if this were a popularity contest, I would not win, and probably neither would my client in this room. But that's not what this is. This is a quasi-judicial land use application, and I can't think of another application where we've spent more time trying to work through the issues raised by the neighborhood and by residents and by the Planning Commission in order to try to get it right. Commissioner O'Donnell, I apologize. I don't think my submittal was late. The record's still open, and I did try to submit it yesterday, but we had a limited time to digest and respond to all the appeals. Since we're not the appellant we didn't have anything to submit at the same time as the appeals. We had to wait for those to come in, analyze the issues, and then respond in writing. We have limited time, but I think that for all the limited time we have here, we had a lot of time before the Planning Commission. I think the Planning Commission did a really, really good job in taking the time, being deliberate, and making a considered decision. I don't see, a lot of the stuff that we heard tonight was in front of the Planning Commission, and some of the stuff wasn't. The stuff that wasn't in front of the Planning Commission shouldn't be considered, but the stuff that was is all stuff the Planning Commission thought long and hard about over the course of 5 hearings and at least 4 months, maybe even more of the hearing process. We think that the Planning Commission made a considered decision. We think that they made the correct decision. The record is quite large, and I apologize that the City Commission doesn't have the time to go through the entire thing quickly because this is a compressed appeal. But what I think you would see when you step back and look at the record is that there's ample evidence to conclude that all of the applicable criteria are met. And as far as the requirements of the Park Place Master Plan, I spent some time today going through it to figure out, okay, what is this actually saying? And I think what the Park Place Master Plan says is, in general, with respect to housing, it says we have recommended housing types and levels of density. We've met those. With respect to trails, you heard from staff tonight how we've met those aspirations in the concept plan. With respect to connectivity, again, the concept plan does not say that we have to build every street in the North Village in the first phase of construction of the North Village, and that's not practical to do. And what we have in front of you is a plan that shows how future connectivity can be achieved as the Park Place area builds out. Again, with respect to density, I think that the record's clear that we've hit that sweet spot, and it took us a long time to get there. I guess the point is that we've worked really hard on this. I do not question for a moment the passion that the folks tonight here on the other side have asserted. I don't agree that if we were to bring a new plan back that they would find it solves all their problems, because some of the problems are just with phase development in general. If somebody came in with all 480 acres with a plan to build everything tomorrow, I would hope that a lot of the folks' issues would be resolved, but that's just not going to happen. We have 92 of those 480 acres, and when we plan for these things, we extend the streets to the outside of the property to provide for those future connections when we can build them. So I don't really have anything to say more than that, except to say thank you to the City Commission for taking the time, and I think running quite a good hearing tonight. But I also want to extend my thanks to staff, the Planning Commission, and even to our opponents and appellants. I don't doubt that there's anything but genuine feelings and concern here and people who want the best for Park Place, but I think that the record demonstrates that ICON does as well, because we took our time and tried to get it right, and we think we did. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you for your time. We hope that you will approve the project, and we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mayor?
I have a question for legal.
Absolutely. Did you want to say something first, Mr. Gebeisman?
Yes, I did want to note that at least one member asked that the record be, at least one commenter asked that the record be left open. You do not have to do that. The requirement to leave the record open is only for the initial evidentiary hearing. You could if you want to, but that would delay decision-making, and given the tight timeline we have with 120-day clock, I'd be very careful about leaving the record open.
Yeah, could you just explain, because not everybody is a land use wonk like I am, so would you just explain briefly to the commission and to those who are assembled what leaving the record open means, and what are the There is obviously an opportunity, but I think that there are more constraints involved. And if you could just explain that, we can get that.
Sure. So when you have a land use public hearing, the initial evidentiary hearing, all parties can come and provide evidence. And the idea is that if in that period, if anybody requests that the record be left open, the hearings body, typically the planning commission, has an obligation to grant that. And by leaving the record open, that would mean that anybody could submit written comments. And so even though the hearing's closed, the record remains open. They could submit letters, typically it's 7-day period to leave the record open. And then, and there's also some provisions that would require an initial evidentiary hearing. If the record's left open, people would have an opportunity to request an opportunity to respond, and then...
it spirals out of control.
Right, and so it gets complicated quickly, and you don't have to do that in this situation. Again, you can, but what I can tell you is that the Planning Commission held a very extensive set of hearings. You've already got a significant amount of documents that you need to make your way through, and I think this is one of the situations that I suspect most people have had ample opportunity to make their views known.
So, gentlemen, I think that the only reason that someone would request the record would be kept open is that there's more information that they want to submit. And I think we've had a preponderance of information, obviously evidenced by your binder. And I'm just wondering if you want to continue to leave the record open. I would like to recommend that we don't, but that's just I'm only one of 4, so.
Well, never being shy, I would concur with not leaving the record open. The decisions to be made, presented on the information that we were presented, which includes both written submittals and oral testimony tonight, and the existence of a plan should be sufficient to review the matter in question and render an opinion. And knowing that the mailing date, I believe, was stated as October 20th.
I thought it was 21st.
21st is the mailing date, or 20?
It's the first. The 120th day is a
Well, regardless,
Sunday.
today is what, the 11th? We have work to do. I have work to do to review everything that's been stated tonight, a second rereading of everything that's been submitted, and a rereading of everything in this 3-inch thick binder, both sides. So I'm prepared to close the record and make any future decision on the basis of information presented that we already have. Thanks.
Agree.
Okay, Mr. Morrow agrees. Mr. Smith?
Doesn't matter, but I agree.
Okay, well, it does matter to me.
Well, there's 3, but...
Yeah, okay, so we are going to not leave the record open. We're going to close the record.
I did have a question for legal.
Absolutely.
In the beginning, we stated that legal would review any statements made for anything that was made outside the record. Do we need to anticipate that this commission will receive some memo from you saying you heard this, but not to be considered?
Yes, I believe there are a few things that were outside the record. Are we able to identify them?
My preference would be to just provide the commission with a list. I don't think it won't be lengthy. It'll just be bullet pointed
That would be fine.
items. I think Pete's got a few, and I think it would be more cohesive if we put our notes together.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
I think a list is fine. We don't need to get into
And we'll
great
get that
detail.
to you quickly so that you know what to disregard.
Okay, so our next, just so I'm staying on task here, so our next statement here is that we are going to close the record by a motion, or we're just closing the record?
You can just close the record as in your role as
Right, and then we are continuing this until the 17th?
Yes, and for deliberations only.
For deliberations only, so, okay. So there were, this is sort of like a point of information, since people talked a lot about the connectivity and those sort of things. So you have to remember that we annexed this through a health hazard annexation in 1980 somewhere, and so that's why the county had it. So if we're talking about county roads, the Holcomb is a county road. Is Holcomb still a county road? We own part of it? Okay. So we have some things that we had no control over as a city. So All right, so we're going to close the public record, and we will continue this to October 17th. And are we meeting at the regular time at 7 p.m.? So we'll be meeting at 7 p.m. I do want to, on behalf of the commission, unless they also want to say something, I want to thank the members of the community for persevering through this, and thank you for your testimony. I know it was a lot of work for folks. We appreciate it.
One final question. So we're closing the public record. You have a ton of reading to do, as Commissioner O'Donnell indicated, and you were presented with a lot of information tonight. If there is anything that staff can provide to you and you can let us know now, that's great. If not, if you want to communicate as make your way through to staff so that we can get that information to you, whether immediately or in public for the 17th, that would be helpful too. So that, you're not.
I have some things. Go ahead, Mr. O'Donnell.
I would just note, having read all the appellants, that there was information in these written transcriptions that was not presented tonight. So in the course of reviewing this information, we will be reviewing both sources of information, both written and verbal. Whether it was presented tonight or not, it's in the record.
That's correct. You need for them? Rocky, do you have anything on your list?
No.
I, like you, Mr. O'Donnell, have some additional reading to do based on what we heard here tonight, and I went through everything just in a cursory manner. I just want to admit that because I wanted to be able to be open to hear both sides of the testimony. So now I'll go back and review everything again. Some of the things that you had in the slideshow that were helpful to me, where you had a couple of those maps. I don't know how you managed to do it, but you had one thing on top of the other so that you could kind of see. I found that very helpful. Is there a way to take the concept plan and the proposed plan showing the hazards or the landslide maps and overlay that? That would be helpful. There was a little bit in a corner on one of them that I could kind of see that you guys had done. That was very helpful to see that. Also, what would be helpful, because they don't make tracing paper anymore, do they?
Yes, they do.
Oh, yes. You have to go to the art store.
They do, but people who know more than I do can make transparencies as part of the computer.
The concept plan and the proposed development plan would be another thing that would be good to see as an overlay.
We're not making the maps, we're overlaying.
I do need. Does anybody got a light table? I can write tracing paper. That's right. You go to Blix and write tracing paper. I forgot that. Yes.
Would it be helpful to categorize and have a list of issues to help you make your way through the decision process on the 17th?
Yes.
I'm seeing at least two head nods. We'll do it, and you can disregard it if you don't like it.
In keeping with the chair's question, an overlay actually of that as proposed and as built does not hurt. I mean, visual aids are effective.
They were really good. I know somebody that has a light table though, so I'll have to.
And we're not, just to be clear, we're not going to make maps.
No, these are things that already
These are maps that are already in the record. That map that has the overlay of the Park Place concept plan with the proposed development, that little snip of the neighborhood commercial, we have that in the whole area already made.
Perfect.
And so that, it's already in the record. I just snipped that close up for the PowerPoint.
Right, that was great. And you had also asked for the PowerPoint, the staff PowerPoint.
I thought the introductory, the staff report sort of set the framework, and I thought it had value, which I think we should have it in our possession. And you know me, I want a hard copy because I don't want to do electronic.
It's already in your inbox.
It's already in your inbox? Oh, it's in all of our inboxes?
When you print it out for me, let me know, and I'll come get it.
Does anybody want anything else?
No.
Okay. Do we have any further business, Mr. Conkle? Does anybody have anything for the good of the order?
Not tonight.
I will say this, that we did have a very nice celebration at the community college for Indigenous Peoples Day on Sunday. I saw so many members of the community out there, so thank you to our friends at the Oregon City Library for coming out, and thank you to Clackamas Community College for hosting it. And it was a really fantastic event, although I did not stand in line for the fry bread because it was really long. So anyway, thank you so much. We are adjourned.